We're live to YouTube.
YouTube. Okay. Welcome, bienvenue, Anine. I'd like to thank our media and broadcast partners, Rogers Today and the city's YouTube page for broadcasting our meeting tonight, our budget meeting. Prospectively, our last meeting of the year, unless we go over into tomorrow for budget deliberations. So with that, I will begin as we do with land acknowledgement, acknowledging with respect that we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawating. Bawating is home to Garden River First Nation, Atchwana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Madam Clerk.
Under agenda item 3, I have a motion by Councillors Segordo and Spina, resolved that the agenda for December 9, 2024 budget meeting and addendum number 1, which contains correspondence from the mayor to the premier regarding relief from policing costs, as well as some administrative amendments to 2 of the motions on the budget agenda, and addendum number 2, which is email correspondence from police, as presented, be approved.
All in favor? That carries.
And agenda item 4, declaration of pecuniary interest. I haven't received any.
Council, no declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none?
Under agenda item 5, this isn't a budget report, but it was a report that was time sensitive, so that's why it's included in today's agenda. The Sioux Trailblazers Land Lease Permission Agreement. There is a report and a motion by Councillors Caputo and Hollingsworth, resolved that bylaw 2024-180, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement between the city and the Sault Ste. Marie Trailblazers Snowmobile Club, Inc. for a land use agreement for the use of city properties for its trail network, be passed in open council this 9th day of December 2024.
Council, any questions on this? Councillor Venezuela? Or sorry, Councillor Hollingsworth?
That's a compliment, so that's okay. It's just a comment, not a question, if I may. I just want to, as a snowmobiler, I just want to use this time to say that this agreement is very important because it represents good snowmobile partnerships. And I just want to emphasize that snowmobilers that are listening this evening, I just want to remind them to respect people's properties, not just within our own community, but as you snowmobile outside in the Algoma area and even outside Algoma. It is a real privilege that we can use people's property. So let's respect their property and stay on the trails. And most of all, be safe, still have fun, and do not drink and snowmobile. It's very dangerous, and be careful of going across lakes. It's a fun sport. It can be safe for families, for every person, but please just be conscious of other people's properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Any other questions on this matter? Seeing none, we can have a vote on the matter. All in favor? That carries. Before I forgot, Madam Clerk, before we move on, I told Councillor Spina I'd give him a minute at the beginning of the council meeting to do a announcement, and I'll provide him that now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really quickly, I'll be quick, but a really important event this Wednesday night, starting at about 5:45 p.m. or between 5:45 and 6:30. A lot of great local groups, including the Sioux Star, Sioux Striders, the Public Library, and the Sleep Inn, will all come together to support the 3rd annual Santa Run. This is a run that helps raise much needed funds every year for our local Christmas cheer organization. In fact, right now it's led by the Sioux Star Santa Fund, who since 1981 have raised well over $3 million to support local families here in Sault Ste. Marie. They have an ambitious goal each year of raising $100,000 to help this charity. And for the past several years, the Santa Run has raised several $1,000s to help them as well to achieve that goal. This year is particularly difficult because, of course, as has happened every year, the need has gone up in our community. But with the recent strike action with Canada Post, unfortunately, a lot of the donations that are normally made to Christmas cheer and to the Santa Fund have not come in. So now more than ever, people in our community need assistance, especially at this time of year. If anyone is able and wants to have a great time, please show up and help the Santa Fund, the Sioux Striders, the Public Library, and the Sleep Inn generate these much needed funds and donations for our local community members. 5:45 to 6:30 p.m. starting at the local library. You can walk, you can run, bring your dogs, bring your kids, have a great time. And of course, wear all the Christmas gear you can because it's a great time and a really joyous event put on by some really great and ambitious volunteers. So I'm happy to support it, and I look forward to seeing everyone there on Wednesday night.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Important message, important cause for sure. Madam Clerk?
Under agenda item 6, Ontario Reg 28409, there is a report from the Manager of Finance. I have a motion by Councillors Zagorda and Hollingsworth. Resolved that the report of the Manager of Finance dated December 9, 2024 concerning Ontario Reg 28409 be approved for the budget year 2025.
Council, any questions on this procedural report? Seeing none, we're going to vote on the matter. All in favor? Carries.
And under agenda item 7, budget 2025 community engagement, a motion by Councillors Caputo and Hollingsworth resolved that the report of the communications officer dated December 9, 2024 regarding budget 2025 community feedback be received as information.
Council, questions on this? Councillor Bezuilen?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, probably to Ms. Vecchio. I think it just in terms of the participation of the in-person budget open house that was on November 20th. I saw that it was during the day. I don't recall if we had one in the evening and if there was any kind of feedback in terms of participation, because I recall that we had done one in the evening before, pre-COVID. That was, we had a lot of presentations. It wasn't super well attended, but I think the thought was to kind of grow that. So Tessa, just some feedback on like the holding the open houses and what kind of participation.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Rezo Allen. We decided to try something different this year, perhaps over a lunch hour, not affecting people's evening activities with kids and school and homework and all of that stuff. So we're just trying to do a variety of different ways to try to get engagement and see what's working at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bezuilen. Councillor Hollingsworth?
I had the exact same question. I noticed that there's 4 individuals that participated, and I was just wondering how she or how we are going to improve for next year. But thank you for your answer. I look forward to some new ideas for next year.
Thank you. Councillor Caputo? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a slightly more of a comment than a question, but we're hearing from Councillor Vezuela that we tried evenings. We're trying lunchtimes now. I think if folks in the community are interested, we want to see you out, and you have to be engaged in your community. I think it's fair to say that the communications officer is trying to get folks engaged. I've seen a ton of really great posts from social media and the website. I will say I've personally, as a counselor, had some people reach out about the budget, and I try and get back to them with as fulsome answers as I can. But I really encourage the community to keep watch, follow the city, check out our website. If your counselors are on socials, give them a follow and just try and keep up with what's going on, because the work that's being done is really great, and we want to see your feedback. It is disappointing, I think, to all of us to see 4 people show up. So in the future, we'll do our best to make sure that it's well advertised, but we would love to see some more community engagement. Thank you.
Council, just to highlight some of the good in this report, there's 2,700 responses to the online submissions. So while the open house was sparsely attended, the responses were plentiful to the budget's public input requests. So good work on that front, for sure. So can we have a vote on that matter? All in favor? That carries.
And under agenda item 8, 2025 proposed budget, a motion by Councillors Caputo and Spina resolved that City Council now proceed into Committee of the Whole to consider the following matter referred to it for consideration, 2025 budget deliberations.
Council, all in favor? All right, we are in committee of the whole. It already feels more relaxed.
So the first item, even though the rules are relaxed somewhat, but we do have some votes that we'll do in committee of the whole. The first is a motion by Councillors Zagordo and Spina, resolve that the report of the CAO dated December 9, 2024 concerning 2025 budget additional information be received.
All in favor? Well, there's, you're going to go over your report first? Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Since the tabling of the preliminary budget, there have been further adjustments to the city and levy and local board budgets. So the preliminary budget initially showed a 5.27% increase, which was reduced to 3.74 due to the additional of the OMPF allocation, and we appreciate this funding from the province of Ontario. Since the budget was tabled, the following items have further been accounted for. Algoma Public Health, their approved budget reflected a 9% increase with a budget impact of $216,192 in addition to the levy. The Social Services budget impact of negative $6,541, which is a reduction to the levy, slightly lower than the 2% that was anticipated, and we appreciate that. And Sault Ste. Marie Police Services budget, a reduction from the levy of $520,000, which is the sum of their additional funding revenues and the reduced budget request approved by their board on December 2nd, 2024. And we appreciate that reduction. So these changes total a net impact of negative $310,349 to the budget, relieving pressure on the tax levy and decreasing the impact to 3.52% as a starting point for our deliberations here tonight. It should be noted that the city share, municipal operations, and the portion which staff control represents a 1.3% increase for the city, which is well below the current rate of inflation. I further recommend some items from the supplementary list to be approved by council. The AMPS supported automated speed enforcement. This has a $0 impact to the levy with anticipation of the fine revenues that will be generated from the speed enforcement. Downtown security of $200,000. This program has proved beneficial in helping to address security issues in the downtown. We have fulsome reports from our external contractor on the number of contacts that they've had during their patrols, and we feel it's beneficial to continue at least until the police station is up and running, the downtown detachment of the police station, I should say. Also, staff complement increases, those total $561,092. We have one additional complement that's been included, which is the Cultural Industries Coordinator. More information was provided to council as an attachment on this role. The rationale for all the positions was previously outlined for council, so I won't go into detail on that, but each provides a positive benefit to the community and to corporate operations. So given the number of positions, staff proposes using the tax stabilization reserve to fund the positions for 2 years. During that time, staff will review the current complement, in particular positions that are lending to the annual vacancy gapping surplus for potential savings that may be able to provide ongoing funding for new positions. Before the 27 budget, staff will report these findings to council. So this is a one-time ask to address several critical resource requirements. Also important, I think, to note to council that the numbers that you see for each of these positions is the salary plus the benefits. So that includes not only the salary, but also the benefits in that number. So that's the total cost to the city. Future complement increases would have budgetary impacts because we're using this as a one-time event for these positions. So there's a number of other further amendments on the regular agenda and addendum that will be considered by council in the committee of the whole, and I'll turn it back to council for deliberations. Thank you.
Council, questions on CAO VER's report? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. If we're not doing formal, I can still go through you, Mayor, to Mr. Bear. Okay. You just touched on quickly that you are suggesting in your report that the the costs be taken out of the reserve for 2 years? Is that for 2 years? Okay. And if I understand this correctly, after 2 years, then it will be a line item?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, essentially staff will use those 2 years to look at our resources. We'll look into the gapping that's currently existing in the organization with an eye to seeing if we can actually reduce other positions, which would then decrease the net levy impact of these new positions.
Okay. And so you'll be looking at, for example, retirements as one example?
That's
Okay. And again, you can't look into a crystal ball, but are you confident that in 2 years, this is going to be basically, how can I say, supported by filling the gaps?
Through you, Mr. Councillor Hollingsworth, I think we have to do the work first. I don't want to say I'm confident. I think there are some abilities for staff to find some savings, which would then decrease, the net levy impact for these new positions.
Okay. And therefore, if you don't find these gaps, then these salaries would be put onto the budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, that's correct. They would be put on the budget. Staff would come back at a report prior to the 2027 budget, which would indicate the results of the findings. And there's a number of different scenarios, but it could be some of those salaries are also phased in as well at that time. But we'll wait and see what the results are.
Okay. And 2 final questions. And in 2 years, we would not be able to say to the individual, your job is dismissed. It would have to be honored.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, certainly, we would have a contract. We would have full-time employees at that stage. The city does have the ability to discontinue positions, but our goal would be to make sure that we find a way to continue those positions.
Okay. Final question. So in your professional opinion, you feel that it's better not to take the hit today in the 2025 budget, but to do your 2-year idea, in your professional opinion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else on the CIO's report? Councillor Gardy? Oh, yes, and then I'll go to Councillor Bruni.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Bruni. I did have him on my list, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gardy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, with these positions that is requested, the complement positions, would we be able to put a figure on, right now, presently, we're 1.3. With these $561,000, can you put that onto the 1.3? Or is that included in the 1.3? It's not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, because we're using the tax stabilization reserve, the 1.3 essentially doesn't include the positions because there's no net impact to the levy this year.
So you're going to use all the money for all these positions, these?
Correct.
Ms. Shell, did you want to explain how the net zero works on the fact that we're adding the positions and taking them out taking the cost out with the reserve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, this is, when we use the tax stabilization reserve, we're using it to backstop these costs, and in this case, over 2 years. So what happens is that we bring revenue in from the tax stabilization reserve that will offset the cost of these positions.
So the 1.
But in 2 years, and I think Councillor Hollingsworth has mentioned it, in 2 years, the council will have to make a decision because it'll be more than $561,000 for these positions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, that depends. So what we would look for is efficiencies in the corporation. So we would remove other positions out of that budget line item for staff costs, and then these positions would take their place.
Would we be in a position to put it on the budget now, several positions, instead of all the positions from the tax stabilization?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, that is council's options. We could pull some of these positions off and add them to the levy this year.
Because I think it would be a major impact in 2 years that you have to come up with. And I know you said maybe through retirement, you might offset these costs, but I'm a little bit worried about that.
If I could perhaps ask for some clarification that might help out here. Ms. Shell, is it fair to say that our surplus the last 2 years, which have been significant, are largely funded by vacant positions we haven't been able to fill for a long time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. It's been well over $1 million every year for vacancy gapping, as we call it. And that's why we asked for the 2 years to review to see if there's positions that we can repurpose that aren't filled and to review the complement as a whole, rather than just adding them to the levy at this point.
So if you undertake this vacancy review or have someone undertake this vacancy review for us, and it found 5 positions that haven't been filled in 5 years, and the decision or recommendation is that we eliminate those positions, I think what Mr. Vare is saying, what you're saying is you could reallocate those funds to cover these 2 years from now.
I'll defer that to the CAO.
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a little bit more clear, and I think it's affordable today. In 2 years, well, that's another story.
Councilor Gardy?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Vare, as it relates to the downtown security, in your comments, you had referenced the detachment 2, or whatever we're calling the downtown police headquarters. When do we have a sense, remind me as to when that's going to be online?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Gardy, if I recall correctly, I'll try and pull it up here. I believe it was with 2 more years before we reached that full complement in the downtown detachment.
2 years, eh? Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kinnick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but Councilor Hollingsworth and Councilor Bruni has covered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Venezuelan?
Thank you, Mayor. My questions are about the additional positions. So should I ask them now, or would you rather when the motion is to fund them according to the CEO report?
The
The
motion,
staff complement increases.
let me see, it's 8.1.3.
Yeah.
If you have questions, you can ask them now. If you want to amend the motion, we'll deal with that in 2 items, if that's fine.
Okay, that's fine.
You want to amend the motion?
I would like to amend the motion.
Okay. We'll get to that then.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Mr. Vare, regarding the events coordinator position, did you or CDS staff look at that being part of a subcontract with an events-based consulting company rather than a FTE?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Venezuelan, we didn't look at contracting out this position. Part of the origin of this role came from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which actually called for the addition of 3 staff and requests to increase events and activities across all the properties within the city, the facilities, the senior center, et cetera. So this role would be supporting a wide cross-section of activities with different areas within the city.
There was a request for the Northern Community Center program assistant. So is the assumption that we have this events coordinator and they would in fact be assisting with programming? Like I'm trying to get a sort of a scope of work and what this staff person would be entailing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Venezuelan, that is correct. They would take on those roles, and maybe I'll defer to either Deputy CEO Brent Lamming or Director of Community Services, Nicole Maione, to answer further.
Dear Mr. Mayor, Councilor Venezuelan, this actually called, there was 3 positions recommended as CEO Vare had stated. This was thought to put 1 position for as opposed to all 3, so we'll be able to use it across, especially at the Ermitinger site, the Northern Community space, the multipurpose space, downtown general events in coordination with tourism. So we thought if this was used across CDES, it would make much better use than having it just in 1 location, and that's why we only put 1 for it as opposed to 3.
Okay, so then we would not look at the supplemental ask for the Ermitinger Oldstone House for the assistant curator, and then as well as the NCC program assistant. This FTE would encompass all of, helping out at all of events and at all of our locations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Venezuelan, that's correct. It would be a flex role that could assist the different properties the city has.
Yeah, as well with their scope of work include large-scale events that, if whether they're happening at the GFL or events that are external to the city but integral, such as Bonsu or larger sporting events, would there be contributions for this person in coordinating those efforts as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoallen, I think the primary role is through our city facilities, but certainly when those large events come, I know it's usually all hands on deck, and I would anticipate that they would be able to support those types of events in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zagordo?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Ver, if on the staff complement, if the scenario that we're looking at here, if we're looking at a scenario in 2 years, everything stays the same and there are no changes or reductions, how would that affect our budget in 2 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo. So essentially, we would have that cost that would be required on the levy in 2 years' time. So the report that staff will bring back in advance of the 2027 budget will outline the results of our work and then the recommended impact to the 2027 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Zagardi, did you have a clarifying question?
With this committee, the whole stuff, I can only ask one question still.
Well, I mean, I don't
That's
want to
fine,
go
that's
back
fine.
multiple times, but if it's a, is it on the CAO's report? Go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead, yeah.
It's a simple question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver, as it relates to the cultural industries coordinator, there was a lot of talk at our previous meeting as it relates to the different components of our, different centers that help promote our culture. As it, like the art gallery, the museum, et cetera. And there was discussion about, you know, a little bit more cohesion across those different centers. Would this cultural industries coordinator be able to help with that, you think, in terms of being a conduit between those entities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, the real focus for the cultural industries coordinator was more on the attraction side. So their efforts would be largely spent on attracting film, television, animation, sound recording efforts to Sault Ste. Marie and coordinating those activities. I suppose if there was some opportunity for interaction with those different organizations, this role would do that. But their role was really more of an economic development type role in order to attract. We've had an annual impact of approximately $8 million with the film productions that have been in Sault Ste. Marie, and we're looking to see if we can continue that work and grow it in the future.
Okay. Yeah, it was just a thought that came to mind. Well, I can't speak this evening. Well, Councillor Vezoallen was discussing it with you. Thanks.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver, on the staff complement, if we're having trouble filling jobs that are currently being posted, what makes these unique? Or like, how do these assist with, you know, sort of those missing links?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I would say that some of the areas that we are having trouble attracting roles in Sault Ste. Marie, or the city of Sault Ste. Marie, are largely roles that include some of our trade positions, some of our labor positions. We've had a pretty good track record attracting within City Hall for some of these niche roles in the past. So we feel that we would be in decent space with these 6 roles in order to attract qualified candidates.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to CEO. I know we've talked a bit about what these positions may cost the community, but would you have, and I certainly don't expect you to be exact with this, but we have some numbers, for example, the clerical research assistant. Would you have some numbers that would suggest how much money we would save with that individual in there? So even if that were a budgeted item at $80,000, would that not be offset by savings we would have?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I think with that role, essentially, it wouldn't be a matter of saving a spend. It would be a matter of actually enabling our legal team to spend more of their time on the tasks that they should be spending their time on, the higher value added tasks, which will see productivity gains for the corporation as our legal department's very busy and there's a lot of contracts going through. So we'll be able to improve service for the corporation with the addition of this role and improve service for our legal team with this clerical research assistant.
Right, and with things like the new vacant home bylaw coming in effect in January, I expect that team would be quite busy and there would be revenues that would offset this position. We don't know what they are yet, of course, but I think there'd be a significant number of revenues that would offset the cost of a position like that. Similarly, the records and elections coordinator, would you have any sense of any dollar value that would offset the cost? For example, someone that, I think one of the functions was doing perhaps civil unions here at City Hall, things like that. Would there be an amount you would have that would show us that would be offset?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I'll let Deputy Clerk Madison Zupa speak to that. There was a business case put together for this position and she can run through some of the benefits there.
Thank you very much. And through you, Mayor Shoemaker, to Councillor Spina, part of the business case was as performing wedding ceremonies, we would gain revenue to offset the cost of the, that's why you see the dollar value lower than what a job class 3 would be, because we're going to offset some of the costs with the revenue from the wedding ceremonies and take in part of the budget that we would typically pay a contract worker to run the election. So there are some revenue sources and some reallocation of funds, and also a small amount related to revenue from FOIs. It's not a great amount, but every little bit helps.
Absolutely, right. So really and truly in 2 years, you may be coming back with the cost savings if you do your efficiency audit on some of these positions that have not been filled and the revenues generated by some of these positions, or at least the efficiencies generated by some of these positions, may offset their costs entirely, and you may be coming back with a significant savings. Is that fair to, is that a fair possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I think I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
So we will certainly set out to do that work over the next.
Right. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that is what you're working towards here. It sounds like.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, it could be an outcome of our work. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Councillor Hollingsworth, clarification-ish.
Yes. Yeah. Through you, Mayor, may I ask this question to Ms. Karen Fields? My question is with regards to a clerical research assistant for legal. First, I want to say thank you to you for spending time with me the other day to go through basically the different processes that your team does day to day. After our meeting, I gained a great understanding how much extra work your team is doing for new changes in bylaws, whenever a bylaw is changed or whenever a policy is changed, and so forth. Can you give me 3 more examples, please, why it's important to have this person working on your team?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, 3 good examples. First of all, we are doing the work of 4 people with 3 people, so it would actually even out the workloads. We would be able to, with this position, take on some litigation that we don't have the capacity for or the talent for. The clerical positions that are in there now, it's not part of their job duties. And we do in-house human rights, some labor board work. We do small claims. We do some Superior Court work. So that would be allowing us to have somebody to assist us with that. It would also allow us to have somebody who has a research skill. So many of the lawyers now, we are researching all the time new things that are coming up, questions that arise, things that come out of bylaws, what's the best way to do it. And we're always in to CanLE and that kind of stuff doing the research. If we had someone researching for us, that would save lawyer time from doing what should be a first and second year lawyer work instead of, senior counsel doing work. So that would be a couple of good reasons why we would need this person, and we would have a good use for them.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an excellent summary. And through you, Mayor, to Ms. Hamilton Beach, when I was speaking with you, I believe you're down a number of people in Public Works. And I think I heard number 1515. Can you just quickly highlight what the importance of this person to help you with your maintenance and to help us service our community and service our constituents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. We're not as high as 1.5. That included some of our sick, but we are certainly down approximately 5 employees, more so with labor operators and trades. This person would be focused on the park maintenance responsibilities, and certainly we're finding that as we have reported to council, based on the age of equipment and the many more sites that we are responsible for, this is a team of 2 that are always going and certainly would never run out of work. So we think there would definitely be benefit to the community at large.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mayor, to Mr. Vare, was this actually cost out on for today's budget? Like, if we did include this into today's budget, what's the impact on our levy? Have we figured that dollar amount out?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hollingsworth, I believe Mr. Facey may have that or be able to get that number in a few minutes.
As he's working on that, I'm just wondering if we can put this on the back burner because this is significant, and I'm scared if we vote on it when we get to 8.12, we might be voting prematurely. Maybe we should wait until we have our debates of the budget, hypothetically.
Yeah, I think the votes in Committee of the Whole, Councillor Hollingsworth, are straw votes. We'll formalize them at the end. I mean, staff will have to know what to build into the preliminary budget to move out of Committee of the Whole and then pass with a finalized motion. But it's not, if we pass it here, we'll have to reconfirm it later on. So.
Okay. That's good. And
were you, just if I could ask clarification before we get the number, were you asking about the impact of the positions or of the entire CAO's report? Because those are 2 different things.
Of the positions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, without the offsetting funding source, the increase goes from 3.52 as our starting percentage to 3.92.
But with the funding, offsetting funding increase?
With the funding, with the offsetting funding, it stays at 3.52.
Right. There's a 0 budget impact if we include the reserve money.
Right.
That's correct.
And if we don't include it, it's 3.92 if I heard correctly. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Shell. Ms. Shell, is this tax stabilization fund reserve that we're taking this money from, is this not what this is meant for? Exactly what we're doing right now?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Caputo, yes, you're 100% correct. The reserve was established to mitigate some and even out issues that may come to the levy and spread it out over more years. But one of the key criteria is that we have to have a path forward so that we're not relying on it all the time. Right now, there's about $6.5 million in the tax stabilization, so we can manage it, along with the other items that are being recommended later in the budget as well. So it is the purpose, as you said. We have the funding to do it, and it also gives us the key opportunity for staff to do their work to make sure that our complement is where it is. As CAO Vare has stated, it does not guarantee, though, that there will be offsetting savings, but we need to do the work behind it first. And this way, we don't have to add it to the levy right away.
Thank you, Ms. Shell. So just to be clear, are we taking from this reserve anywhere else in the budget?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, we still have the 800,000 in there for what we're using to backstop the police until such time that the new division is opened.
Okay. So we would still be leaving over $4 million in that reserve?
Correct, if we end up using it. So we have backstop things in previous years during COVID, et cetera. And we had increases in fuel that we also backstopped with the tax stabilization. But we were able to manage it corporately, so we never utilized the funds.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just a clarification on that, Ms. Shell. Last year, we backstopped $1 million in increased expenses through the tax stabilization reserve. But as I understand what your response was, or if I'm understanding your response correctly, we didn't actually use that $1 million because we had a significant surplus.
Gee, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
So it's theoretically possible that if we backstop these positions with the $500,000 this year, the reserve's at 6.5 million. It may still be at 6.5 million next year if we have another significant surplus.
Correct. And it also doesn't inflate the levy artificially.
Right. Okay. Other councils with questions on this report? Ms. Shell, I had a question on this report. There's 3 things in here. We focused a lot on the staff complement. There's the automated speed enforcement and the downtown security costs. What is the impact of all 3 recommendations as presented if they're implemented? Mr. Facey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the percentage increase would be 3.67. The only amount added on the levy is the 200,000 for downtown security.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So from 3.52 to 3.67, it's all 3 issues dealt with in this report included in the budget.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, council, this report is, let me just go back to it here. To be received for information. So can we vote on that? All in favor? That carries. Now there are 3 motions beneath it, which will each be voted on individually, Madam Clerk. And we can debate any one of these individually as well.
So the first one is the automated monetary penalties. Is there somebody who wants to move in second?
Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Caputo.
It's a motion by Councillors Hollingsworth and Caputo resolved that the addition of automated monetary penalties supporting automated speed enforcement to the 2025 budget at a cost of $0 be approved.
Questions on this, council? Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question through you to Mr. Ver. If the automated speed enforcement is approved here tonight at budget, and in future years, council decides that they want to amend the bylaw for school zone enforcement to go from 24 hours to during school hours only, would that have a monetary effect on the levy hit for automated speed enforcement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yes, could have a potential impact to the fine revenue that would be coming into the city.
And then at that time, presumably before that kind of decision was made, staff would bring back a report to help remunerate what exactly that impact would be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, yes, I think at that time, if council were to look at pursuing that, staff would have data available that would be able to be provided to council, which would indicate the potential revenue impact for that decision.
And presumably that data at that time would be of better quality than estimates that we would have today.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council questions on this? Council, I haven't supported this in the past, won't support it tonight either. I think that the evidence and the practical reality of this is that we will increase our staff complement and not see the corresponding increase in revenue, because if these are set up, let's say, for example, on Bennett Boulevard, people are going to divert their traffic patterns to Queen Street or to Trunk Road to avoid the automated speed enforcement, not realizing the increased revenue, but while all the while realizing the increased cost associated with the automated speed enforcement because there's an additional staff member to be added to the POA division as a result of this. There's also, if we use Pine Street as an example, people will avoid that by using Willow or by using Lake. So I think that speed enforcement using this type of speed enforcement will not generate the revenue that we want to see, but will generate all the cost that's associated with it. And I think it's a lot of additional cost for not much monetary gain. There are better ways to do speed enforcement, in my view. What they did, what you could do through environmental design is, in my view, the appropriate way to do speed enforcement. It does take longer to implement throughout the community, but it gets you better results overall. So I don't support this. And with that, I suppose we could have a vote on the matter. All in favor? Two, three, four, five. Any opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Councillor Gardy is absent. So maybe we'll just defer that. And Councillor Gardy just ran downstairs for a second.
So I will cancel that.
Cancel the vote.
Come back to it. 8.1.2. The proposal by the CAO was the addition of downtown security by budget, the cost of $200,000. And there is an amendment proposed by Mayor Shoemaker. Resolved that council direct that the downtown security increase requested by staff in the sum of $200,000 be funded at the sum of $150,000, which is to be brought to council in 2026 to determine if it is to remain allocated to the downtown security program or be reallocated elsewhere in the operational budget. I have you as mover then.
Yeah, unless there's a mover and a seconder who want to put this forward. Councillor Vezoallen. Councillor Caputo.
I could leave you as mover.
That's fine. We'll use Councillor Vezoallen and Councillor Caputo.
Did you want me to open that for vote? Or?
Councillor, is there questions on this? Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver, what is the impact of funding this at 150,000 versus the full 200,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, essentially we would have to trim back the hours for the security patrols. So currently we are approximately 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., 11 to 3 p.m., and then 6 to 10 p.m. So we would have to look at those hours in conjunction with our team and the external security company to figure out perhaps the hours, and maybe they feel that they would be less required, and then reduce their contract and the number of hours they're patrolling.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver, has the community reached out like positively with the downtown security?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, we have received positive feedback from the downtown businesses and some residents on the patrol. We've had, looking at the results 2024, about 302 interactions that security has been involved in, and it seems to be a welcome service in the downtown.
Okay, and should we decide to fund this to whatever amount, is there any opportunity to have security out any later than 10 p.m. or is that like a stipulation of the company that we hire?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I believe at this time it is flexible. We're able to work with the company to set the hours that we want.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ver. Can you just refresh our memories? When you say downtown, where would the security actually be? Will it be just along Queen? Downtown in some people's eyes are not just along Queen. It has basically flooded over to other areas, including the library. We've had a wonderful presentation from the library. Will security be able to go into that area as they were hinting at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, right now the security patrols are from East Street to essentially Bruce Street, and the patrols are focused along Queen Street. Based on, business reporting or incidents, they sometimes go into certain alleyways, but essentially they're patrolling up and down Queen Street. It's a fairly significant, territory to cover the entire length of Queen Street or even to go down to the hospital. So we focused them in this initial pilot on that section from east to Bruce, essentially.
Okay. And how many are out on the shift? Is it just 2 that are walking, or is it 4, and the 4 are spread throughout between Bruce and East?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, it's 2 guards at one time. And they will alternate their hours or shake up their hours now and then, just so it's not predictable when they'll be on Queen Street. But those were the rough times that I gave earlier that they're on the street.
Okay. And so these 2 individuals that work together, they correspond really, how do they change? How do they know where to focus? Do they work with the Downtown Association and your department?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, both, yes. So we'll get reports from business owners that say they're having a problem in a particular area, and we'll work as staff to adjust those locations. They can put particular tags that their guards actually scan to make sure that they hit all those spots. So we adjust those from time to time based on need in the downtown.
Okay. So one final question. Can you emphasize again, talk about the tags? That's new to me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, it's essentially a small tag that the security guards scan with their phone, and that's part of their IT tracking system that shows where they are at different points in the patrol and shows that they've hit the different spots that we've asked them to on their patrol route.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Venezuelan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, in terms of the downtown security, and I do see them very often, and in working in coordination with the Downtown Ambassador Program, do the ambassadors and the security company ensure that they're working off times? Because the ambassadors start typically around 3 o'clock in the afternoon and work till about 8 or 9, and plus they work all weekend. So has there been, in terms of looking at, because we do also fund the Downtown Ambassador Program in coordination with the Canadian Mental Health Association, has there been discussion in ensuring that having coverage, that the security is not necessarily needed when the ambassadors are there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Venezuelan, there is some overlap between the 2 patrols. With that said, the downtown ambassadors do have a longer route that they follow, and they also go farther off Queen Street into different areas in the downtown core. So with that, somewhat overlap, there is communication among the 2 groups and working to make sure that it is coordinated.
Yeah, the ambassadors, I do see them in the Station Mall, the library, and they do have all along Gore Street, they do have a larger geographic area. But I think in terms of the budget that we're putting forth, I think $150,000 plus what we already fund the ambassador program, we're really making sure that downtown's safe, and that's the main thing. But I think both groups, in terms of coordinating schedules, I think it could be done more efficiently.
Thank you, Councillor Venezuelan. Councillor Zagordo, did I see your hand up? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver. Do we have a specific timeline when the downtown police precinct is expected to open?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo, my recollection is 2 years before it's fully staffed.
Fully staffed. Will there be any kind of patrolling going on in the new year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo, I'd have to confirm that with the police chief. I do know that with the new special constables, there is the ability for those special constables to do things like bike patrols, but I'm not sure if they'll be able to do that next year.
So there is a potential for next year to have the ambassadors downtown, a security crew downtown, and some police presence could be possible. Is that true?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Zagordo, my understanding is that next year there won't be much of an impact just due to some of the hiring that the police have to do, their attrition in replacing roles. It would be in the future years that we would be seeing more police presence in the downtown from that new detachment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zagordo. Other councillors with questions on this? Okay. Mr. Facey, what's the impact of going from 200 to 150,000 in terms of the overall increase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'd be at 3.63%.
Instead of 3.67. Okay. Thank you. Okay, council, can we have a vote on the amended motion to go to 150? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We can go back to the automated speed enforcement one, Madam Clerk.
Disregarding.
Just on,
8.11.
okay, well, one sec. I've got Councilor Bruni on the list first. Councilor Gardy was in favor.
So that was 10-1. And then I will go back to 8.1.1.1, the automated monetary penalties, and I
And Councilor Bruni on the list first. Go ahead. Councilor Bruni's
do
mic.
you want me to open the 8.1.1?
We'll have them make their questions or comments first, and then we'll go to it, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since you made comments that you were against it, I want to make several comments that I'm for it because we're going to have a revote on this. Councillor Hollingsworth and myself sit on the committee, and our chairperson, Mr. Dan Perry, is sitting behind me. When the mayor stated that it will cost the city money, presently budgeted, it's budgeted at zero. Hopefully that we can bring in revenue to offset all the costs. One thing that many of our councillors have heard is basically the speed in our city. And we heard it as a council. We set up a committee, and this is what the committee is recommending. There's other cities in Ontario that have this. Sudbury, Ottawa, Toronto, Kitchener. And Mr. Perry, is there any other ones that you recall? If you can add, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni, Brampton, Hamilton, London, Mississauga, Waterloo, York Region, Pickering, Barrie.
So many other cities have this. So I disagree with the mayor to say that drivers will alter their driving habits and they will go elsewhere. Well, then hopefully we can have more of the automated cameras in place so people can be ticketed and people can drive safely in our city. Near school zones is important. So to say this will not work, I disagree with the mayor, and I'm hoping council, now that we're going to have a revote, will vote in favor of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Bruni. Councilor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Councillor Bruni spoke well to it, and through you, Mayor, to Mr. Perry. I know you're in your new position, but you've done a lot of work with the team on doing the proper research with regards to speaking to other communities, receiving testimonials, and what type of impact did it make on speeding in those communities? And we talked about school zones, but I know we talked about other safety zones, retirement homes, hospitals, and other childcare areas, places where we are also concerned about speeders and our citizens.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Hollingsworth. So the legislation allows us to use automated speed enforcement in school zones or community safety zones. And based on, the information we've seen in other municipalities, ASC has definitely been an effective tool in reducing speed in those communities.
Okay. So if I hear correctly, it's been effective to reduce speeders. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. In your professional opinion, can you, once again, in your professional opinion, you seem to agree that we should implement this. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Hollingsworth, reducing speeding in school zones and community safety zones where we have some of the most vulnerable road users, I would recommend doing anything we can to reduce the speeds in those areas. And ASD is a provenly effective.
Okay. If I may make a comment, I've been on council for many years, and I have to admit, this is my, how can I say it? This is this is so important to our community. Children, those are disabled, seniors, those that enjoy bicycling on our roads, where we as a community are increasing bicycling lanes. We're also noticing more active people in our community walking, unfortunately, on roads that have no sidewalks, jogging on roads that have no sidewalks. And these areas also go through the community safety zones, these roads. As Councillor Bruni has said, we've knocked on the doors when we were being elected, and it was one of the top priorities, speeders. If there's any other resolution that has come for me, this is the one that I truly believe in 500%. And it's not to grab extra revenue, it's just to slow down speeders. And I know that we have tried other ideas and will continue to try road diets and so forth, but we know that those are also going to be temporary. I ask my council members, please support this. This is all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a lot of really good comments coming from both yourself, Mr. Mayor, and from some of my council colleagues. The way I see it, I definitely think that speed control through environmental design is absolutely the way to go. I think it's the most effective in controlling speed. The problem with that is that it would take us generations to retool the physical infrastructure of our city to get to that ideal environmental design to control speeding. And so from my perspective, I see ASE as a bit of a stopgap to help control problem areas in a way that's cheaper than some of the increases to police services that we've seen. I think that we will see a levy impact in future years. In particular, I do have some concerns with 24-hour speed enforcements in school zones. I think that one's going to generate a lot of understandable complaints for folks who are, in some cases being given significant fines for behavior that doesn't have a significant impact on the community. For instance, going 50 or 60 in the middle of the night past a school. So I do think that there will be a future levy impact to this if we do approve it tonight. My argument would be I think that levy impact is less than it would be to deploy Sault Ste. Marie Police Services across the city to these problem areas to try and enforce speeding that way. So I look at the ecosystem of speed control in our community as being on a continuum, with physical interventions being kind of our gold standard, the best thing we can do. I see ASE as being kind of in that middle way, and kind of our most expensive option being police enforcement of those speeds. So because of that, I do think I will support this tonight, but I'm supporting it with an eye to not having it 24 hours in school zones, and to understanding that there could be future year levy impacts to have this tool in our toolkit as part of our service mix to control speed in the community. So thanks very much for all your comments, everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one topic I've thought long and hard about each time we've discussed it. And I'm going to speak from experience on most of this, because I am someone who has 20 years experience in enforcing this in our community here. And I will say there's been some points made by some of my fellow councillors here that have said this will not divert drivers to different areas, or, automated speed units will not divert or change behavior of drivers. I would say that is 100% an incorrect statement. These units will 100% divert drivers to other areas. They will simply displace speeders from one area where this unit is posted to another. And if that were not true, then I wouldn't be able to drive with my iPhone in my hand and have it send me a message automatically that says, speed trap ahead, slow down or divert your path. That's happening today on everyone's phone in every community across Ontario and across Canada. So if we put these out there, I'm willing to wager that it will divert traffic and it will simply displace speeders to a different part of the community where they are not now. The number one thing we can do to address speeders in our community is to leave it in the hands of the people who are authorized to enforce it, and that is the police service. The second thing is these automated units have absolutely zero discretion. A police officer doing traffic duties or traffic enforcement has discretion. Someone is racing to get their wife to the hospital because she's pregnant. Someone is racing to get a loved one to the hospital. There's discretion there. They're not going to get a ticket. They're probably going to get escorted to the hospital. How many of these tickets are going to be issued because there's an emergency vehicle that's gone by one of these units trying to get someone to the hospital or trying to get somewhere where they're going to assist people in our community? It's a waste of time and resources because we're going to have to chase those down. Areas of concern like school zones and old age homes deserve speed enforcement, but they deserve the gold standard of speed enforcement. That is not these units. That is an officer that is trained and able to provide speed enforcement in our community, someone who is there to provide for the safety of the community, and someone who is dynamic and has discretion in order to best serve the community in those functions. I suspect in other communities where there has been reduction in speed in these areas, I suspect those reductions are simply because the speeders have diverted to a different area and the traffic has diverted to a different area. As our designers have mentioned, they're well on their way to designing areas of our community to slow traffic down through environmental design. I think that's simply the best thing that we need to do. And these, in my opinion, these units are simply not what's best for our community. I think they're going to be something that we are going to really have a hard time dealing with between any kind of vandalism to them and any kind of issues that come up in the future. I think we need to leave this enforcement where it belongs, leave it with the police service. They are the experts and allow them to do it. It's not City Council's job to get into the policing of this in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Spina. Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Vare. Tom, have we decided if we were to put these in, how the funds that we are forecasting would be spent?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I'll let Dan Perry speak to that a little bit further.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, we'd recommend any revenue generated from ASC to be rolled back into the roads budget for road safety improvements.
Okay, thank you. So I am a strong towns proponent, and strong towns talks about, they don't necessarily support ASC, but they do talk about when ASC is implemented, a great way to make those environmental design changes that everyone's talking about is to be able to put the ASC in an area and then dedicate those funds that are raised to making those environmental design changes in the neighborhoods that they sit. And then once the funds are raised, the design is changed and the ASC is moved to another spot where we could then allocate funds to make those changes. That's where I sit on this. I think it's, I'm going to vote in support of it. And I hope that we can do that, where we can allocate those funds to those neighborhoods where we're seeing speeds being really increased and use those funds to make the environmental changes necessary. I've heard from my colleagues, on both sides of this debate, 100% this is going to change this, 100% this is going to change that. We can't say that until these are put in. It may change patterns of drivers, it may not. But what I see is that even if we divert these people, we are hopefully diverting them away from school zones. We are also helping, Councillor Spina is talking about police services. Yes, absolutely, they're the gold standard in doing this, but I'm not hearing about tickets anymore. So, if we can assist in that area, I think it's great. So all in all, I'll be in favor, but I would hope that maybe we could take that suggestion under our wing when we're hopefully allocating where those funds go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Councillor Gardy.
It's my understanding that this was voted on and there was a tie when I was out of the room, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm voting against it, so we can move on now.
Thank you, Council. I'll go to Councilor Zagordo first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not really much about guessing or hoping what's going to happen with these units in place. And we don't have to guess and hope. We've mentioned here a number of communities that have had these in place, and I'm sure the homework has been done. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Perry, have these units and other communities that have already had them served the purpose that we're questioning here this evening, that we have some doubts about this evening? Or have they gone the way of, for example, what the mayor mentioned tonight, where they didn't serve the purpose, so that there's no guessing in our decision-making here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Zagordo, based on the research we've done, ASC implemented in other municipalities successfully reduced the speeds in those areas where they're used.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zagordo. Just to follow up on that, is there any evidence as to whether or not the traffic's been diverted away from those areas where ASC has been implemented?
To you, Mr. Mayor. I did a little bit of napkin math a few weeks ago when we were talking about this earlier. And when you think about reducing your speed, say from like 60 to 40 through a school zone, we're talking like a delay in travel time of like 10 to 15 seconds. So yeah, I agree that there probably is some diversion, but I think the average driver most likely would just slow down through those areas.
Okay. Councilor Bruni, you did ask to go again. I'm not keen to go back to folks twice, as we have a number of times, but I did previously, so I'm going to let you as well.
I thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And just a couple comments and I do respect Councilor Spina. I sit on a couple of committees with him, and I do sit on the police board with him. But when he says it's police services responsibility, unfortunately, we have a budget tonight from the police services, which has increased by $3 million, and they can't get enough officers. So how are we going to provide police services to patrol school areas to give out tickets for speeding? And I'm not going to debate. You make comments and I have to respond to it. I know you have experience in the police services under 20 years, but we have a major situation with our police services that the budget continuously grows, and you witnessed it. And are we going to hire more police officers to patrol the school zones, et cetera? Or can we bring in this ASC that will help out the safety of the children, adults, especially in school areas? And that's my comment. Thanks.
Councilor Bruni, we can have a vote on this matter. All in favor of implementing it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? That fails. Which brings us, Madam Clerk, to 8.1.1.3.
Mover and seconder.
Is there a mover and a seconder for the staff motion on complement increase? Oh, Councillor Bezuallen wanted to amend it. Can we have a mover and seconder? Oh, Councillor Kinnick's got an amendment as well. All right. Can we have a mover and seconder for the main motion? Councillor Caputo and Councillor Bruni? Okay. So is this an amendment by the two of you? Those are separate amendments. Okay. Councillor Bezuallen did mention the amendment earlier, so I'll let her go first and then I'll come to you, Councillor Kinnick.
The change would be to approve all of the listed positions, save and except the events assistant, to have it come back to council in January as a one-year contract position. And then after that, determine if that's something that we should have as a permanent placement.
Okay.
Similar to what we did when I think about with Emily's position in the green initiatives and all that thing. So I think I'm not totally convinced right now. So I think if we add it as instead of a full-time FTE, if you can come back in January as a contract position for 1 year, then I'd be amicable to that.
So before I ask for a mover and seconder for that amendment, Councillor Kinnick, what is it that you're proposing?
So I'm proposing that we add 3 of those positions to the budget here today. So that would be the records and elections coordinator, the public works maintenance employee, and the cultural industry manager for a total of $247,423 to be added to the 2025 budget. And then we can debate the rest if we wanted to use the tax stabilization fund.
Okay.
Sorry, which 3? Look.
Records and elections coordinator, public works maintenance employee, and the last one was?
The cultural
industries coordinator. I don't think those are necessarily conflicting motions. So we will deal with them one at a time. We'll deal with Councillor Vezo-Allen's first. You're the mover to take that position out of the budget and fund it on a one-year contract basis. Correct. Would you propose paying for that still through the tax stabilization fund?
Yes.
Okay. So it would just not be going into the preliminary, approved budget next year. So is there a seconder for that? Councillor Scott? Do you want to say your piece on, I think you did basically on why.
I think I have with the comments and questions that I gave to Mr. Ver. I think we take a look and see exactly what this position would look like, because it's not a position we've had before in the corporation, see what other nuances there needs to be. So I think it's sort of like a work in progress. So I think having it as a contract position, because you might, after the year, feel, no, we need something different, right? So I think there definitely is a need in some capacity to kind of do all these roles. I just don't know if we've really have flushed it out properly. And rather than it be a permanent position, I think do it as a contract and maybe even put it out for an RFP. And there might be a firm that it's not necessarily a person. It could be a contract through a firm as well.
So if I've captured what you're suggesting, it's resolved that the motion be amended by removing the offense assistant at 97,084 and instead that the position be a contract position for 2025.
Correct.
So anyone want to speak in opposition to that? Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm normally on the same page as Councillor Vezo-Allen, and this is not anything against her. I just think that, where events in Sault Ste. Marie are concerned, I think we need to get really serious about them. And I would like to see this position funded. I think giving someone this full-time position and not as a contract on a 1 year gives, that stabilization. I think it allows the community to recognize that we're serious about getting the plaza and the NCC and, our events really in order. So I would not be in favor of just putting this on contract. I think that this should be something that we get really serious about. So thank you.
Anyone else on this particular amendment? For my part, I don't see that big of a difference, to be honest. We could, if we hire this position, it doesn't end up being funded in the ultimate, phasing out of the tax stabilization funds in the 2027 budget. I think we're no better or worse off necessarily. It's effectively a contract position at that point. It'll work if it works, and it won't if it doesn't. It won't be recommended for continuation. So I support the position going in. Contract, no contract, I think is, given that it's funded through the tax stabilization either way, not a huge difference one way or the other personally. So with that, we can have a vote on this to fund it as a 1 year position instead of an increased complement. All in favor? Any opposed? That's defeated. That brings us to, he voted opposed. He can't get into these.
So then, Councillor Kinnick's Is there a seconder?
Is there a seconder to fund the, Councillor Zagordo to fund, and you've got a written motion there if you want to bring it up? Gotcha. Okay.
So it's resolved that the addition of the following staff complement increases the records and elections coordinator at 59,776, public works maintenance employee at 87,056, cultural industries coordinator 100,591 to be added to the 2025 budget at a total cost of $247,403.
Essentially, council adding them without using the tax stabilization fund to offset the revenue.
Seconder?
Is there, yes, Councillor Zagordo is the seconder for that. Councillor Kinnick, I'll let you speak in favor of that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through reviewing the budget and talking with staff, I believe these three positions are positions that are needed at City Hall. This will find us some cost savings with efficiencies between departments. There are some overlaps with the positions that they can help out. One position helps out two departments. Going forward, I think with this on the budget today versus deferring it with this tax stabilization doesn't create such a big future increase to our budgets. And this year when we're coming in at 1.35, it's not that big of a hit to put in almost 250,000 for three positions at City Hall, which I think will, with the efficiencies, we will find, like for example, the elections coordinator, where we can start doing ceremonies in City Hall with that position and reducing our spending at election time, which is coming up. We will see the savings. And then, as we said, we will be reviewing with CEO Ver, finding the rest of the positions. Then we don't have to find such a big sum of money to offset the rest of the positions. So thank you.
Councillor Zagordo, did you want to add anything to that? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, I strongly think he's on the right track. And I don't know how to pursue or proceed from this, but I would like to see each position not be part of the tax stabilization reserve, but I would like to see somehow where we can basically vote on each position, because the three he selected, I agree with two out of the three, but I think there's still one that's missing, the clerical research assistant for legal. So I don't want to get into the muddy waters because we'll be just doing another resolution, another motion after motion. So how can we start pulling each one? Because obviously we all have a good feeling for different ones, you know?
Yeah, I'm getting the sense that there's comfort with the positions, discomfort with funding them over 2 years because of the impact that may have on the 2027 budget. So get where you're coming from, Councillor Kinnick. I would suggest perhaps somewhere in the middle here is that we fund them from the tax stabilization this year at 100%, decreasing 25% each year over the next 4, with the potential that in 2 years, they would be the balance, which would at that point only be 50% of the amount remaining, might be found through the savings that are reviewed from staff. So it would have no impact on this year's budget, a quarter of this total amount, which is 130-ish grand on next year's budget. But it's getting built in every year, little by little. And then in 2 years, if they find the efficiencies in the staffing review, it might be that they can absorb the balance of 50% then remaining. Would that satisfy your concern, Councillor Kinnick? Doesn't go quite as far as you're proposing, but it also doesn't go quite the other way, which is what Councillor
I would be willing to compromise to that, yes.
Okay. Does that, you both had questions. Does that clarify your questions and concerns? Okay. So could we vote down Councillor Kinnick's motion? This
Or
way
we
we
could
can,
just leave it with no result and
yeah. Do you want to withdraw it?
Sure.
Okay. And do you want to move to amend the main motion to phase out the tax stabilization reserve at 25% each year for the next 4? Okay.
so if I change that to with funding from tax stabilization reserve for 2025 and report back, does that affect that?
For 2025 on a declining basis of 25% thereafter, each year thereafter, something like that. Understood what the general concept is? Yes, perfect. Satisfied, Councillor Hollingsworth? Go
And still the report back before 2027?
Yes. Everyone's both moderately pleased and displeased at the same time? Okay. We can open that for voting. All in favor? That carries. That brings us,
Under 8.1.2, proposed amendments, and these are amendments that have come in from the mayor and then one from Councillor Caputo. Did you want to have a discussion?
before we go
Next
into,
step.
yes, before we go into all the specific items, I was wondering if, so council, I've drafted a reduction motion, which is 8.1.2.1, which would reduce the budget by 350,000, and then increase motions for the library funding, the arts and culture funding, the annual park upgrades, physician recruitment, community development fund, and Councilor Caputo has drafted one for the Dolly Parton Library. Mr. Facey and Ms. Shell, if all these were implemented, do you have the number on what would be the proposed levy increase? We can do that in 2 minutes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with all of the amendments proposed, the tax levy percentage increase would be 3.68%.
3.68%. That includes the downtown security, which was already passed. So open to discussion, I suppose, on any of them. If there's questions, Councillor Bruni. Hollingsworth, Councillor Bezuel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to Michelle. Michelle, what have we been given the physician recruitment? What's our annual budget for it in the past?
Do you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, just give me 1 second and
Yep.
to pull it up, because we did have an increase over the last couple of years. I just Currently, the city's share is 140,000 of a budget of 270.
And out of the 270,000, who's providing the additional?
The additional amount, I think, is evenly split between Sioux Area Hospital and Group Health Center.
Okay. Have they increased it at all? Do you know?
I'm going to put that to Mr. Vera. He sits on the committee and he might have better background on me on the history and what's currently looking.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the Sioux Area Hospital increased their contribution to, I want to say, I believe it's 80,000. And Group Health Center currently is at 60,000.
Okay.
Group Health Center was at 85 last year because they had overpaid the year before. So they matched Sioux Area Hospital's increase last year, but not on a go-forward basis.
Does any other councillors have questions on
Do you have comments? You're welcome to make comments on.
No, I'm fine. I just wanted to get some clarification on that.
On physician recruitment, are there other questions? Councillor Bezuel.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, in terms of the budget, what does the, and I know Mr. Ver sits on the committee. What does that budget entail? What are the expenses, staff, the deliverables?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, essentially we have 1.5 staff people that are involved in physician recruitment. So we cover the staff wages, and then as well, we cover marketing, attendance at trade shows and events. We do have a small budget for physician relocation, so the city will pay, or the physician recruitment manager will pay for a visiting physician and their family to come and visit Sault Ste. Marie and cover up to a certain amount of costs for them to visit the community. So there's some incentives there, as well as some activities for retaining physicians. They have some events for physicians are in the community for retention.
In terms of what's being offered by the province, there was the Northern Physician Retention Initiative, which applications ended March 31st, 2024. Does our team, the physician recruitment team, regularly communicate, whether it's with the Ontario Medical Association, whether it's through the ministry, like what are, like, it is, a provincial responsibility that we have healthcare. So my concern is, we're slapping $50,000 at it. What is that impact going to be? Is it really going to make a difference? Or do we need something, larger to happen in terms of us getting physicians here in the north?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, I think probably safe to say all of those things. Certainly, physician recruitment is in touch with their counterparts. When we were at the AMO show, the mayor lobbied with the Minister of Health to support the northern communities in our physician recruitment efforts. The city is undertaking the study right now to locate a campus of Nossum University in Sault Ste. Marie. And one thing that we've seen over the last year, especially, it has accelerated quite significantly with the incentives that other communities are putting out to attract physicians to their communities. So it seems to go in ebbs and flows, and we're currently at a point in the cycle where we're seeing a lot of competition from other communities, and a lot of other communities are offering increased incentives in order to land physicians. What we're trying to do is the best job we can in selling the community to attract them here and creating the environment that those physicians will want to come to. The resources that the mayor is proposing certainly will be well used, I think, in our efforts to do what we can to attract physicians to the community.
Well, I think in terms of the $50,000, I would like that to be specifically used for incentives for physicians, not for operations. I do know the hospital provides, an office and things like that, and there's a lot of in-kind as well. But I think, as a municipality, if we are putting funds into recruitment, it should go to something that will actually benefit us being able to attract physicians. I don't think it should necessarily go to wages and overhead. I think it needs to go to something that we ensure that it's to, whether it's the moving costs or we can enhance that. I think that is where those dollars should go, and that if they're not used, then they're not used. And that's my opinion on that. So I don't know if we can amend that motion, but I would like that $50,000 to go strictly for activities that get physicians practicing here.
Thanks, Councillor Vezo-Allen. I could tell you I'm the chair of the committee, and so I've had a couple of years' experience here on their budget and the impact of incentives. First off, this committee, our committee and our community isn't in the doesn't undertake the practice of paying physician incentives. It did many years ago when it was happening all across the province. And as Mr. Ver said, the process kind of ebbs and flows over the years. For a long time, for my last 8 years on council, there had been no communities essentially offering incentives. There's a moving allowance that is, you could categorize that as an incentive, although it's capped. But there's no kind of direct payout to physicians to come and practice here. The thinking in the physician recruitment committee, when I began, we've been through 2 physician recruiters since then. The first one retired, the second one moved to a different job, was that the incentive only keeps the physician there for the return to service period. And if they really want to come to your community, they're going to come with or without the incentive. So they might just be getting something they would have otherwise come to your community for anyways. There's some debate on that. It obviously, with other communities turning to incentives, is something we may have to look at. The budget or the funding, as you heard, is $270,000. The budget is regularly $300,000 in expenditures. And the thing that puts the committee over the expenditures is how many physicians have moved here and claimed the moving allowance. That's the thing that moves us into deficit or out of deficit in any given year. So I can tell you, without having to amend the budget, that any increase in funding will go to buffer that area where there are currently deficits, which is if we pay out moving expenses, it creates a deficit, which we're trying to avoid by increasing their budget. The staff costs are covered in the current operational dollars that are given to them between the 3 organizations. And then so it would be marketing that could be increased, which is largely done in conjunction with Tourism Sault Ste. Marie. Tourism Sault Ste. Marie has also helped as of the last couple of years, I would say, in the site visits and bringing physicians who are doing community tours around. And that is another area that fluctuates each year and can create a deficit. So if there's a lot of physicians visiting because they want to do site visits, they want to consider us, then we move into deficit territory. So this 50,000 would go towards incentives, but not the way
No, and
you would traditionally
I wasn't
think of an
meaning like
a cash
I don't
payout.
want it to go to overhead and salaries. I want it to go to how are we going to get physicians here, and maybe the moving allowance needs to be increased because it doesn't cover current costs in relation to what it was when it was set. That kind of thing. I just don't want it to go to overhead or salaries. I want it actually to go to activities that will help us to attract and retain physicians here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Absolutely. I'm happy to narrow it, but I think it ultimately does that. So it's up to you if you'd like to move an amendment to it. I'm happy.
I would like to narrow it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we do that, we'll go. Councillor Scott had questions. Councillor Hollingsworth had questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to either yourself or to Mr. Vare. How long has the Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee been around?
2002, I believe, was the first year.
2002, okay. And so in those 22 years, do we know roughly how many physicians we can tie to this committee?
It was I'm working off memory here. I think it was a net gain of about 18 over those years. The challenge has been that many of the gains have been for specialists and many of the departures have been for family physicians. So we are left in this situation where there is a shortage of family physicians, but we're doing better in areas that 20 years ago we were lacking, like in specialists. So,
okay. That's better than I thought. Almost one a year, which is pretty good. I guess that's really all my questions for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Vare. Doing our best to compare apples to apples. With regards to this amount that you mentioned, what our physician recruitment budget is, do you know any other communities such as Sudbury or someone closer to us in Thunder Bay or North Bay, what their budget is? Out of curiosity, do you know that? Are we basically in the ballpark of them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I don't have those exact numbers in front of me. I believe North Bay and Sudbury are in and around the same amount of our total budget, 250 to 300,000 for their physician recruitment efforts. And then over the past few years, though, some of those communities have created this extra incentive pot that the city, industry, hospital, other players have put into for incentives on top of that budget.
Okay. Couple more questions. I am a practicing registered nurse, and I do work with a physician that comes out from Toronto every 6 weeks. And this individual has recruited on his own physicians. I have also been very fortunate to be on the NOSM board for many years. I'm not on there now, but I was recently. And again, talking with Dr. Sarita Verma, who was the past president of NOSM, has said to many of us around this room, around Northern Ontario, the way to attract physicians are one, what are you going to do for their spouse? Two, how are you going to create a turnkey office for them? Three, how are you going to make sure that when I'm landed here as a physician, I'm going to be comfortable and I'm going to be accepted into the community, and I have the workload won't be all on my shoulders, but will be distributed. Four, the administration aspect. How are we going to handle those? Those are some examples that physicians are looking for. So going to my colleague, Ms. Councillor Lisa Van Allen, this money that you're suggesting is not about always putting someone in a car or airplane and have them travel across the world trying to recruit physicians, but it's more about how do we keep the people here. And these are proven facts on what physicians are looking for. So going back to your point about being more narrow on this, I'd rather see this money put towards turnkey medical offices. I want to see it more about having other physicians that already are here rally around new physicians and make sure they're comfortable. And again, for those other examples I mentioned, basically the workload, the education, continuous education. The overall, we're missing the boat here. The physician recruitment needs to be overhauled with these proven facts by Dr. Sarita Verma from NOSM, where she and other physicians have asked for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other Councillor Caputo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if I should direct my question to you or to Mr. Ver, but what are the most common reasons physicians are turning down coming to Sault Ste. Marie?
I don't know that there's any one in specific. Lately, we've been hearing that there's greater incentives elsewhere. So that's.
I heard it snowed here a lot.
I can tell you that the greatest attractor of physicians to the community is people who have some connection to the community. So some of the challenges, finding daycare is one of the big ones. The ability to practice research and development here is one of the things that hampers physician recruitment. But all those, depending on your specialty, vary to some degree or another.
So I ask because I wonder if there's like an opportunity that we're missing rather than investing in into the physician recruitment. If we're like, are physicians missing certain equipment that we should be looking at that would more attract them here? Is more OR space, like do they want to perform more surgeries? Is that what's, making them not want to come? I'm not opposed to spending these dollars. I just want to make sure that they're being spent in the proper way that could help attract. So I don't know if you guys have any comments on that, but.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I think two things I would say. One is on a positive note, where we have also been successful is where we've had residents spend time in Sault Ste. Marie, meet their colleagues. There's a very collegial environment amongst the healthcare community here, see the new hospital, see the operating environment that they're in. So I think that bodes well for the community in terms of having an inviting atmosphere for these physicians to practice in. Because there are so many different specialties and so much variation in the needs of these different physicians and specialists, it does present, I guess, a bit of a problem. With $50,000, it really would not go far in order to acquire equipment or outfit a clinic or any of that. That would be an entirely larger budget that we would have to come back to council with. I think the $50,000 here certainly would go towards the good cause and the work that we're doing in order to try and accelerate that work. And we can look at, with the new physician recruitment manager, other needs in the community and perhaps come back to council in the future with other ideas on things that may be beneficial for the community in order to attract physicians.
And if I could just add to that, Councillor Caputo, because I think it's an important point. This council has invested in an awesome study that is being undertaken, and that is a way really to offer, first off, students the ability to have some time here, familiarize themselves with the community, because there is significant evidence that the students who study in Thunder Bay and Sudbury at the NOSM campuses there stay in those communities at a higher rate than physicians who come here for, a 6-week rotation, then go back to Sudbury or Thunder Bay to study. But in addition to that, it would also offer the existing physicians here the ability to teach at NOSM, which is a professional development that we really don't have currently. And so it's one of those ways that we could try and not only attract folks who will have experience with Sault Ste. Marie, but retain folks who will have a broader professional fulfillment in being able to teach at NOSM as well.
Thank you. I just have one comment, if I could. As a person who requires daycare, I really sympathize with these doctors that need it. Has there been any discussion about putting a daycare at the hospital?
I haven't heard any of that discussion. I think the hospital's got its budgetary issues given their funding parameters. But what I can tell you is that this council invested in the YMCA, which salvaged the daycare spots specifically on McNabb Street for many physicians that practice at the Group Health Center and elsewhere in the community, but specifically at the Group Health Center because of its proximity to the YMCA. So I know that that is something that there was much concern in the community about not 8 months ago.
If I could just add my 2 cents here, and I'll be quick, but we're coming in, like the world is changing, and there are a lot of women that are single mothers. There are a lot of doctors who are now, these women are professionals. They need daycare. Households now, both parents work. I think if I could offer the advice, I would look into this daycare thing, because as a mom, this is the thing that would sway me, like maybe even from a bigger city like Toronto or, where, whatever, if I could drive my daughter to the same place that I'm going and pick her up, take her home from the same place, and feel confident in those daycare services. So perhaps that's an avenue to explore. But as far as the budget goes, I'm happy to be in favor of increasing this if we think that it's going to help. Thank you.
Councillor Gardy?
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of the 50 grand. I don't think anybody should think it's going to do wonders, quite frankly. We're all in the same position. We're in the same position as any other community in Ontario because there just aren't enough family doctors, period. So, when I listen to Councillor Hollingsworth, I think she makes a decent point in kind of for our community to relook at how they're recruiting family physicians, with an emphasis on family physicians. But unless there's some drastic change to how doctors are trained and educated in this province, I wouldn't expect $50,000, $100,000, or $250,000 to make much of a difference. So I'll support this moving forward, and I think Councillor Hollingsworth also touched on a very salient point when she talked about how the medical community at large, doctors specifically, need to embrace doctors who want to come into our community and do everything that they can to work with them. So our community and other communities across the province, those residents get the healthcare that they need. I don't know how true it is, but I have heard that sometimes physicians can be an impediment to other physicians settling in the community, and that should not be the case. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. You're right about one thing, that this, well, you're right about multiple things, but certainly on the issue of this 50,000 not changing the world in terms of physician recruitment's abilities, that's right. But I can tell you that what we're currently doing needs to be funded at a greater level if we're going to even keep pace with where we are. And so, it was at the beginning of this year, after our last budget, that we had 10,000 patients derostered. And so physician recruitment is going to need more money. If we approve this year, we will likely be asking for additional funds in future years. And so this is going to be a problem for a generation, given that there were not enough physicians trained as the population aged to where it is currently. So it is going to be expensive, and this is part of the steps that we're going to need to take to get there. Councillor, before I go back to you, Councillor Bruni, Councillor Kinnick, did you have your hand up? Okay. Councillor Scott, did you? No. Councillor Bruni.
But what you mentioned, they're going to be coming back to council. It would be appropriate if they come back to council before budget time with some results, so council understands that this funding that we're providing can be passed on to our councillors and to our constituents after.
Absolutely, Councillor Bruni. Physician recruitment, I'm reminded by Mr. Ver, did have a presentation, although it was probably in April or May, if I'm recalling correctly, not specific to their budget increase, but on the results that they've produced over the 20-some years. Councillor Hollingsworth.
To add to that, because we did a resolution about a year or 2 years ago where they are supposed to come to us every 6 months approximately to give us an update. So that was a resolution that was done 2 years ago.
And they did come to us.
And they did, exactly. So
we'll make sure that they continue to do so.
And it'd be nice to see, if I may say, all these ideas that were talked about tonight to be put into this physician recruitment as an overhaul. We had great ideas tonight. Maybe we can come back with a new plan.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. So Councillor Vezo-Allen, are you proposing to narrow the resolution?
Correct, just so that it doesn't go to overhead and salaries, but it actually goes to.
Oh, you already amended it.
Yeah, she already did.
Sort of a friendly amendment. Resolved that council direct the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee operational budget to support efforts to directly improve the local primary care shortage as opposed to administration costs.
I think that's reasonable. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Spina? Anyone opposed to that? So we can have a vote on the, oh wait, we're not really voting on
you
the-
can on this one, and then I'll continue the discussion, and we'll accept it from if the others pass on consent.
So all in favor of the, before we vote on that, I'm just going to make a couple comments because I spoke kind of generally about the motion, but, or I spoke specifically about the motion, but not generally. I'd mentioned that earlier this year we had 10,000 patients derostered. The $50,000 is, largely a response to that. We are going to need, as I mentioned, to increase our budget in physician recruitment. We may need an overhaul altogether, Councillor Hollingsworth, but the reality is whatever overhaul we do, or if we continue with the physician recruitment efforts that have been ongoing for the last couple of decades, it's going to take money. And this current budget isn't sufficient for the current needs. And if we overhaul it, I trust that it will likely not reduce the amount that we're spending, but increase the amount we're spending. So that is in large part why this motion is on here, to ensure that we are in the game this year and going forward into future years. So with that, I will call for the vote on this matter. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Councillor Bruni, we were on you. So other matters?
Yep. Yes. I guess the question to you, Mayor, regarding 8.1.2.6. Can you just elaborate on this one, please? The $50,000?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Appreciate you asking. This has been a request. There's a social equity stream within the community development fund that has never been funded. And it is the area where this council has had to grapple with the most challenges. I would say over the course of the 2 years we've been on it, we have pulled funding from economic development to fund Harvest Algoma. And then we pulled money from economic development to fund our YMCA contributions. So those really aren't economic development drivers. They are what I call local priorities, what would fit within some modified criteria of the social equity stream. So the proposal is to start a pot of money within the community development fund at $50,000. Hopefully that'll we'll be able to build up without too many additional crises in the offing. For which we would have dedicated funding for, instead of continually drawing from our economic development funding to pay for social challenges in the community. That's where this came from.
Okay, thank you.
It has been requested in the last 2 budgets, and council has not seen fit to add it to the budget.
Okay, I can second it because you moved it.
Okay, yeah, we'll look for a mover. We'll get you to move it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Vesuel. Anyone else on 8.1.2.6? Councillor Kinnick.
Councillor Bruni started to ask them questions. I just wanted to ask them further questions. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lammy, I believe, or to Mr. or CEO Vera. I'm not sure who it would
If you ask it, we'll.
So just you kind of Mr. Mayor, you kind of generalized what this would do. Could we just have more specific examples? So like in the future for Harvest Algoma, this would be a fund already ready to help, or like the YMCA, this is what this is going to start, or how is this money going to be used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, yes, we do have some current guidelines for the social equity fund. As the mayor indicated, we don't currently have a pot of money that's attached to that fund. What we would be doing, though, would be to revisit those funding criteria, probably expand them a bit and bring them back to council. But it would enable support for those worthwhile community causes that aren't economic development, but important community priorities.
Just another question to you, Mr. Ver. So any decisions or any money given out from this fund or the pot that you said, is it going to be approved by council, or is it just approved by yourself because it's under your limit that you're allowed to go before council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, these would come back to council for council approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions on that? Okay. Are we going to vote on that separately, Madam Clerk? Yes. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Councillor, you voted against? So 10-1. Councillor Gardy, supportive? 9-1.
So 9-1.
Councillor Bruni, still on you?
Thank you. My last one regarding 8.1.2.7, Dolly Parton. Not that I'm against it. I'm just against where this money's coming from. It's coming from the annual conferences and the major special events funding. I'm just wondering, should this money be coming from somewhere else? Or should it come from the library itself as part of their budget? I don't know who to ask this.
Ms. Schell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. This budget line goes back quite a few years when we actually had a special events and conference committee that would allocate these funds. It's kind of been sitting in limbo since the TDF Tourism Development Fund has come into place, and they actually provide grants utilizing MAT funds, the Municipal Accommodation Tax funds, to provide for some of these conferences and special events that are occurring. So it hasn't been well utilized. So that is why we've looked at that pool of money to repurpose it for another project now.
This will be going forward for every year. $10,000 or more will be put towards this Dolly Parton Imagination Library, correct?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bruni, yes, it would be ongoing unless council defines a term.
So I guess my question to Mr. Ver or to the mayor, why can't the library pick up this cost? They come to us for their budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library was an initiative started with the city of Sault Ste. Marie. We did have some outside support from the program, businesses that have donated to the library, or sorry, to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. The library's role in this, they help to create awareness of the program, but the funding of the program has always been with the city and private sector contributions, as well as some of the service clubs that have donated to support this.
And again, I'm not against it. I'm just trying to figure out why the library, because it's at the library, correct? It's not at the library?
If you want to
Sure,
explain
go ahead.
the process a little bit, Councillor Caputo.
I'm happy to talk about it. Thanks, Councillor Bruni. So Dolly Parton's Imagination Library provides books for children from birth to age 5, regardless of income, family income, anything like that. $4, essentially it's $3.85 per book is the cost to the city. So if a child signs up from birth, they'll end up with 60 books that are free to them. This has nothing to do with the library, but what it does is encourage early literacy. And so when we started this, Rotary came on as a partner, Kiwanis came on as a partner, Zonta Club came on as a partner, Avery Construction, the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and then community donations. So we were just over $17,000 budget, and I'm happy to report that we have filled that. There is 350 kids receiving the books, and there are over 100 children on the wait list, and that wait list would have grown significantly had staff not decided to put a stop on allowing children to get onto the wait list to avoid disappointment. So as this has grown exponentially, I think $10,000 is a great place for the city to sit with the donation, along with the work that Kim Vaudry has been doing. She's really administered the entire program. She's been absolutely amazing with that. And the communications from the city, from Tessa, and the program has really shot off. And affecting early literacy, I mean, I won't go off about that, but we keep seeing the police budget inflate, and a great way to try and make that go down is to teach kids how to read and how to use their imagination, I guess. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Councillor Bruni. But as of right now, we're sitting at 350 kids serviced and over 100 on the wait list. And so I hope I can have everyone's support on this. Thank you. Oh, and it came from that fund because it's not being used. So I think just reallocating it makes sense. And to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't been used in a few years, to say the least. So it's just easy to roll it over there and put it to some good use. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. And like I said at the beginning, I do support it. I just had questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. On this item, Councillor Hollingsworth, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Council. I agree with Councillor Bruni. I'm not opposed to this. I just don't think this is the right line item, and I'll tell you why. Because I know there's conferences coming down the pipeline that are going to be coming to Sault Ste. Marie, and most likely be drawing from this line. So I guess my question is this. Hypothetically, if there's a conference next year that comes to Sault Ste. Marie, are they going to be competing with this line item? Or in other words, how much money is in this particular line item right now?
Perhaps I can go to Mr. Anderson to explain how major conferences are funded presently.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. If it's a tourism generator, it would apply to the Tourism Development Fund. I know personally we've had experience with that with the FONOM conference. We have a matrix that's available and a significant amount of funding through the Tourism Development Fund. Based on the number of attendees that are coming to the community, they would be eligible for funding up to $20,000.
Okay, thank you. So then why do we have this line? I mean, it seems like you've answered the question about conferences and events. So when do we draw from this line if a conference event's coming? Like, what's the difference?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, Michelle can provide further information, but the line is basically a legacy line item that was established before the MAT funds were in place. And so it hasn't been greatly used because we do have the MAT funds now in place. So that was why the recommendation had come forward to transition from this line item to support the Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
So hypothetically, why don't we change the line item to kids or something like that so that we don't just support the Dolly Parton, but we may support other children's programs in the future because we don't invest enough into our kids. And how do we change that line item name? And yes,
essentially what Councillor Caputo's brought a motion forward to do. If you want to reallocate it to something else, Councillor Hollingsworth, that would be within your purview to have proposed, although what's up before us right now is to reallocate it to this.
True. And then separate thing is changing the name from events, conferences to children.
The proposal is to change it to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Madam CFO, is the conferences major special events line item 10,000?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it's only 10,000.
Okay. When I started on council, there was a conferences and major special events committee that used to meet, and myself and Councillor Hoopanen were on it. And it was in about, 2016, I would say, 17, that a proposal was brought to the Conferences and Major Special Events Committee. It only met once in my time on it to grant $10,000 to the Jehovah's Witness Conference that was proposing to come to the Sioux at the time. More recently, that conference has been funded to come to the Sioux through the Tourism Development Fund. So I see this is essentially a duplicative overlap in the expense that the conferences and major special events line item still gets, and to reallocate it helps a worthy cause without adding to the budget. So for those reasons, I support this reallocation of existing funding. Councillor Kinnick?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, I think she would be just some questions about operations on this program. So you said that we have 350 kids on the list, on the wait list. Does this $10,000 cover that backlog?
So the 350 children that are currently being serviced are serviced under the $17,500 that we had. So last year, the city gave 5,000. And then Rotary gave 5, Kiwanis gave 6, Zonta gave 1, Avery Construction gave 500, and then there were community donations. That funded the 350 kids. Now there are over 100 on the wait list. So this extra 5,000 would allow us to open that, to absorb the cost of the 100 that are waiting and open the wait list back up. But rest assured, council as well, I know staff and myself, we will be approaching, Rotary, Kiwanis, Zonta again. And I know Zonta was interested last year in perhaps giving more. We will be asking for more. There is also the opportunity, if anyone is ever interested, for community members to donate. Last year for my birthday, I turned 40 and I asked for donations, and that was, anybody can do that as well, but just any little bit helps. And I think to Councillor Hollingsworth's point about allocating this money to kids, This is a great way, it's a great legacy for this council to be able to make sure that children are always being considered until this line item changes. If we voted in tonight, it will always go towards children age 0 to 5 and early literacy. So I think that's something that I would be really proud of and something that I think all of you should be really proud of too.
Just one more question, because it's, so it's 0 to 5. Do you have a rough idea about the turnover from 5 to 6? How many new people are going to be, like new spots are going to be available coming years kind of thing? Or do we start everybody at 0?
So in my perfect world, I would love to shoot to have enough funding that we could leave pamphlets at Sioux Area Hospital, and every time a baby is born, we give that pamphlet to the mother and she, or father, the parent, and they're able to sign their child up immediately, or even pre-birth, right? And we'd be able to get every child in Sault Ste. Marie. I don't know how many are turning over this year. What I do know from the stats from Stats Canada is that there are 3,040 children under the age of 5 living in Sault Ste. Marie right now. So this funding will go toward making like a great difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardy?
Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna say anything on the 10 grand for Dolly Parton's library, but the only issue I have with the Imagination Library is this one. Hold it together, Mr. Mayor. The only issue I have is the mandate is for the books to be purchased for any family, regardless of its family's income. Okay? Pardon me? Yeah, it's called equity. It's called equity. Yeah, well, I'd say maybe it necessarily isn't equity. I think that there are probably a lot of families in this community who would benefit from these funds a bit more. I think if we wanted to make a real difference in children's literacy as it relates to students from, or children from 0 to 5, I think the best way to do it is to kind of build out funding for this initiative to the private sector. So like this would be on an ongoing basis, this 10 grand, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against it. I'd revert back to the 5. I just think that if we were to go to 10 and it'd be an ongoing part of our budget, despite it only being $10,000, I'd like it to be directed to families who could really use the money to purchase books, because I don't think somebody whose parents make a combined income of $300,000 should be getting books purchased by us writ large, as opposed to a family that might be on, social assistance. So it might not be the nicest thing or the most fair thing to say, but it's how I feel. I can tell you by being an educator for the last 25 years, the students who are challenged most with literacy and where we direct a lot of our literacy intervention are to children, unfortunately, who come from, needier homes and others. So that's my input. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Are there other councillors with questions on this? Yes.
Would you make a friendly amendment instead of saying Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, but something like children's, knowing that some of this money will go toward the Dolly Partons, but it will open up the opportunity that we can fund other children's programs?
I'm going to say no.
If you would like to move that, we can see if there's a seconder, but I'm not sure it's real clear what you're asking for.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that $10,000 is going to go towards Dolly Parton, which is understandable, but there's so many other causes out there that I personally like to see $5,000 to the Dolly Parton and have $5,000 available for other children programs, because kids are our future. That's all.
Councillor Hollingsworth. Unless you've got somewhere specific you want to allocate it, it's tough to, generally allocate it to children. It's what she's proposing is a very specific allocation of a very specific sum to a very specific cause. So if there is a specific spot you'd like to allocate 5,000 of this 10,000, we can move an amendment, but it's hard to, set 5,000 aside for unknown reasons.
We already do for other events and conferences and so forth, and people apply. But anyway, I'll do it separately in January.
Thank you. Councilor Bruni?
To Councillor Caputo, I'm sorry I brought it up, but would you be in favor if we just changed the resolution basically to provide funding for 2025 and you come back to council and ask for the money again over and over?
Thank you, Councilor Bruni. I would prefer not to do that. What I'm trying to do right now is take funds that are not being used and have not been used in a number of years. So I've worked with finance and the mayor to find a place where this was going to just like slide in, where I wanted to add it to the levy, but we found a spot where it was just already, it was there and not being used. So at this time, I think like I could continue to come back, but the thing for me, I might not be sitting here in 2 budget cycles. And I think that this is something that's important to the community. It does no harm. And, respectfully, it's not being used. So I just want to use it. That's.
I'll just note, Councilor Bruni, though, every decision we make is subject to review every budget year, essentially.
I understand that. If she put that in the resolution, then fine, I would have been okay with it more.
Right. Councilor Spina, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I think an important point of clarification through you to Ms. Schell. The funds that we're talking about are already there, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, yes, that is correct. It is repurposing, as the CAO said, a legacy budget line.
Right, so next budget cycle, that money would be there again, correct?
If we go with this resolution as it stands, we're going to transfer it to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, so that'll be funded ongoing.
Right.
That 10,000, it will not sit there anymore as a conference and special events line.
Right, so this is literally just changing the name of something. Because we're funding it no matter what every year right now anyway, and it's sitting there doing nothing.
I guess you could look at it as that it's changing its name. It will move into another area.
To a usable area.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can't use the line that's there right now.
No.
Correct, okay. And, all right, so just a quick comment. I think we've, in a $250 million budget, we've talked more about $10,000, I think more time about $10,000 than we have about $300,000 items. For me, I'm willing to support this and move it forward. It is simply, in my view, a reallocation of funds that we cannot use because it's on a line item that item doesn't exist anymore, to simply put it somewhere that will benefit everyone in our community. So I'll be happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spina. We could use it. Council said use $10,000 from this to fund whatever.
But we don't.
We don't.
Right.
Councilor Visualan? We're about to, potentially.
Thank you. I support this, and I'm happy to second it for Councillor Caputo. Literacy is really important. Early learners and also being part of a club. And while I certainly appreciate Councillor Gardy's suggestions that there should be some sort of salary consideration, families, I think what it does, it equalizes everyone. So, all the kids that are in grade 1 at St. Basil's are all part of the Imagination Library, and they can talk about and they can share books and do exchanges. So I think, when we're taking a look at this, and I have fond memories, we used to get Dr. Seuss books mailed every month because I'm really old. And it was really, I was so excited, and I would share my books. And I think if you can bring the love of reading into people and into families, then that just only increases likelihood of success and future educational opportunities. So I support this, and I think it is the longest $10,000 that we've ever debated. I'm going to take a vote. Yeah, but I'm happy to second.
Any other questions? No. All right, we can vote on this reallocation. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Councillor Bruni, we're still on you. You're not. Who was, I think I did have a list. Councillor Hollingsworth, you're next. You've lost it. Councillor Vesuelen.
My items on 8.1.2.3, funding the cultural.
Yes.
So of the increase of 160, we're allocating 90, which only gives a balance of 70 for the Cultural Vitality Fund moving forward for applications into 2025.
Right.
Do we know how much the value was of applications that were received in 2024 that weren't funded? I'm sorry, I should have asked that. Or even a ballpark.
I think Mr. Lamming might have an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vesuel. And yes, specifically for financial assistance grants, there's 104,500, and for the public art, there's 40. I'm advised that we were approaching the neighborhood of double of what was available for the 104,000. So this would go a long way to go towards helping those applications.
But it would only be $70,000. And you said you had 100 and...
The budget was 104,000 with the 2 intakes, and we had close to double of applications. So this would go towards that.
So it would decrease the amount that you could fund outside of the 3 organizations.
No, it would increase it by 70,000 from 104,000 to
Okay,
70.
okay, the way the more, that's what I'm trying to get clarification on. So we're increasing it by, so that 104 is still going to be there.
That's right.
Okay, okay. The only other thing that I would like to add, and I have sent emails, so there's no surprise. I do have concerns with the continual deficit from the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, primarily the 103,000. I didn't really get satisfaction completely from the answers. Is that before each of the organizations get that increase, is having their 2025 budget and their most recent audited statements. We shouldn't be funding deficits. That's not best practice in any grant-giving organization, and this is a fund available to us. So I think that should not go towards any deficit payment or relief.
Councillor Hollingsworth, part of the request here, sorry.
It's okay.
Councillor Vesuelen, part of the request here is for the agencies to report back to the Cultural Vitality Committee on an ongoing basis. So it would be, there is a metric system, matrix, I should say, not metrics, matrix system that is used to evaluate these applications for cultural vitality funding year over year. And so that would be built into future requests that the museum, the art gallery, and the Bush Plains Center would have to follow in order to receive future funding.
Do we have a statement on the application that we will not fund deficits? Mr. Ver or Mr. Lamming?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vesuelen. I don't know that we have that exact statement, but I think there's wording to that effect in terms of, providing financial stability for the organization, proof of financial stability and budgets and those types of things to our applications. So certainly we can make it more clear in our application process, but I think that wording is, that same point is captured in our criteria currently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions on this matter? Okay, we can have a vote on that. All in favor? Oh, sorry, we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Vesuelen, Councillor Spina. Okay, vote is open. All in favor? That carries. Any opposed?
Councillor Kinnick in favor?
This is on the Cultural Vitality, Bush Plain Museum, Art Gallery funding. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to CAO Ver, I believe. I just wanted to ask about so are we increasing all three of these requests to the sums that the outside agencies came to council to request, or is this something different? Because it's not very clear in this. Okay. So if we approve this, are we still able to individually after raise an amount, the rest of the funds in a different motion after this, or is this closes it off?
It'd have to be before we raised from committee of the whole, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm interested in to support the Bush Plain to the full request.
Okay. So.
That's all. But I'm okay with approving this and then doing
Yeah,
another one.
let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
Okay. So that carries.
Councillor, okay, Vesuallen has stepped out. Councillor Kinnick, I'll go to you next. You're proposing to fund the Bush Plains request.
Their original request, the Bush Plain, was 235,000, which would support the Bush Plain and Atomica. And that would, their original, say that they received is 195,000 and they wanted to increase it to 235. We just approved 35,000, so I believe it's 20,000?
We approved 30, so
30,
another 20?
or no?
Another 30. Another 30 is what Councillor, CFO Shell is telling.
So I would like to bring that to support them another 30 this year.
Is there a seconder for that? Do not see a seconder for that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. We're still on you if you want to discuss any of the proposed motions or propose other motions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The annual parks upgrade
Yes.
committee. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lamming. So I know this has been on, this is part of our parks master plan. And it has been on the supplemental agenda for a request for a while. And have you received any funding so far after the new parks master plan has been proposed to carry out the plan?
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, this will be the first formal request since the Parks and Recreation Master Plan of the 360,000 that allows us to do 2 parks in 2025. We were able to have different support over the years for parks of Anna Marinelli, Rosedale, Downtown Plaza, the West End Mansell Splash Pad, and then Parkland and Westwood, which were set to open in the spring. So this would continue the work on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to do 2 parks in 2025.
So with this, you would receive 120,000 and that would, you would be able to upgrade 2 parks with that money.
You, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kinnick, it would be 360,000 to do 2 parks, yeah.
360,000 for 2 parks, okay. Okay, I'm willing to second this. Okay.
Do we have can you move it?
I can move it.
Okay. Councillor Bruni will second it. Councillor Caputo, question? Then Councillor Gardy.
So I just want to understand correctly, tonight, we would be giving 120,000 of the 360 that's asked, with the other 240,000 coming, so they will be funded to the full amount?
No, this would fund one park annually. The 60% of our park subdivider reserve has to be used annually pursuant to provincial legislation. In typical years, 60% equals roughly 65, 70,000. So the 120 we put into the budget and the 60% of the annual parks subdivider reserve combined are 180,000, which is one park a year.
Okay. I'm just going to make a comment here. This year, every time I took my daughter to Bellevue Park, I actually stopped taking her to Bellevue Park because there were so many slides that were not in use and or broken or, you know, whatever. And every time I was there, people asked about, you know, how do we get the funding for these parks to be up to par? And I think Bellevue Park is an absolute gem. I've been to, you know, parks in other cities. There's nothing comparable. I think if the request is for 360 and we can make these parks available and safe, because not only were these slides down broken, Public Works did their best to make them safe while they weren't available to be used. But when a piece of equipment is down, it's not really safe to have those kids on the entire playground. So I guess maybe Miss Hamilton Beach from Public Works, could you just go over why you need the 360 and if you're funded fully, will any of my park anxiety be relieved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo. The focus of this money would be primarily the neighborhood park replacement. I do believe, and I do not mean to speak at a turn, that all those slides in Bellevue Park have been replaced as of the course of this year. But as we did report in this year, a lot of our equipment is aged and from time will have to be removed from service to keep the area safe for the children to play. But this is, I think, a real healthy move to get us in a complete upgrade situation for each of our neighborhood parks.
So you're okay with the proposed 120?
I think that's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
What I would like clarification on as well is the Bellevue Park situation specifically. I realize we're not talking about that in terms of the funding, but my understanding of the equipment breakdowns there is that it's not for lack of funding that those pieces of equipment are down, but for lack of available parts. Is that correct?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we truly do not have a capital pot for that type of replacement. In our report, we did ask for 50,000 to be dedicated to that type of repair, which I do not believe we obtained. But we have been able to replace, unit by unit, and in some cases weld, et cetera, pieces together to keep them operational.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bear, you wanted to add about this funding, leveraging other funding potentially?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to add for council, staff did have a meeting with NOHSC, and through their community enhancement fund, we learned that park upgrades, particularly ones that increase accessibility to parks, may be considered eligible. So whatever council gives us tonight, we will certainly try and leverage that with NOHFC and hopefully be able to tackle more parks next year.
Yeah. So I think that when we go door to door and we're campaigning, we're always talking about how we can best benefit the kids, what we can do for the kids. You know, I want my time on council to be focused on making sure that, that they have all the things they need. I would be interested in moving something to fund this more, to be able to give them what they're asking for, if there was an appetite for that.
Before we get to that, I've got Councillor Gardy and Councillor Spina on the list of questions. So we'll do that first and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Trudeau.
Okay, so you prefaced something that you said that when you spoke, Mr. Mayor, that it wasn't directly related to what we were speaking about. So I'm prefacing my comments with that as well.
I shouldn't have.
So, yeah, well, you give me a little liberty there, so a little leeway. So this, I'm not as familiar with the Parks Master Plan as I probably should be. And my comments are probably going to be counterintuitive to that effort and some of the comments that are already been made. And it's probably going to be a little controversial. I'm of the opinion that we have many underutilized parks, and we have a number of parks that are far too large of a footprint for how much they are used, especially when you have a park that say is an acre in size and you have a little bit of equipment in the northeast corner of it and the rest of the park kind of just dogs poop all over it. So my thoughts are this. I think we need to revitalize our parks. I think we have to ensure that our parks are the proper size. I think we have to look at where we have parks located currently and how close they are in proximity to each. And I'm of the opinion that a lot of the, not a lot, but some of the funds that we're looking for to revitalize the parks that are heavily used could come from maybe selling some of the property for development, for densification, and then using those funds to help revitalize some of our parks. I'm going to use one example in Ward 5. So David Kyle Park on the corner of 5th Avenue and Douglas Street is large, quite large. And there are people in it when I go by it. But I would think that any developer would love to put maybe some townhomes that we've been seeing all over, maybe on the Douglas Street side, and reduce the size of that park by, say, 30%, right? Which will still service and we'll get some funds. Here, you know where I'm going. So I think we could be a little bit more creative as to how we go about funding and revitalizing our parks. I think we should use assets that we have that are valuable currently to fund those that we want to invest in moving forward. And if I just spoke for the last 3 minutes for no reason, because the park master plan and those involved in its efforts are doing just that, my apologies for bringing it forward. Thanks.
Madam Hamilton Beach, Deputy CAO Hamilton Beach.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardy, the master plan actually did look at that. So it did assess population, geographic size, and what our percentage of land is dedicated to parks and how it is in fact allotted. So I believe we were right in line, if not a little short. And I would certainly refer that to Mr. Lamming. But because we were looking for that number as well, right? We wanted to know if in fact all what we are maintaining is in fact in line with other communities. So to answer your question there, the result was not, you have too much parkland in comparison to those that in fact they did look at and compare us to.
We're still on you.
It's a follow-up question, not a retort, well, kind of a retort, but through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mrs. Hamilton Beach, in taking into account that, what qualifies as recreational space or park space, does like the hub trail count for that?
Very good question. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Lamming, would you recall that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, we actually fall short. We had a plan and we reaffirmed it when it came to council. We were actually back in 2018 when we started, it was actually 3 parks per year we were looking to do. And so this coming into 2 has actually gone down from that standpoint. We've done 6 parks since then, but the plan does justify doing 2 or 3 at a minimum. And it does take into consideration the hub trail that goes around the city.
It does.
Yes.
And we're short park space in the zoo, as it relates to like the average or what kind of the goal is for province or whoever quantifies this kind of metric as to how much park space we should have?
That's what Ms. Hamilton Beach's response was, yes.
Really agree with that, but I'll leave it. I'm going to stop.
That's within councillor, our purview to change if you disagree with it. Probably not a discussion for tonight, but specifically on the funding for one park revitalization request, I think what you've heard Mr. Lamming's answer just give, the answer Mr. Lamming just gave was they started out at 3. They said they could settle for 2, and we're about to fund 1. So we're not moving real fast ahead of the curve here. Councillor Spina, I had you on the list. Your question's been asked and answered. Anyone else on the park motion? No. So the amendment, Councillor Caputo?
You know what, after this discussion, I'm happy to leave it where it is. I think that even though Councillor Gardy might think that he spoke for no reason, I think what you said makes sense. And I do think we have a lot of parks, and it would be in our best interest to make sure that we're utilizing them properly. So maybe that's something we can work on in the future.
Absolutely. So that will bring us to a vote on this motion. All in favor? That carries. I believe unanimously.
That does carry unanimously.
Councillor Kinnick, I'm still on you. I'm not sure what's left. 8.1.2.1.
1 and 2.
1 and 2, yes. It's only the library and the reduction in the inflationary increase.
So let's go library security.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to move this one as well. We heard from the library staff that at council how helpful the security was at their library. We did fund the downtown security patrol. I think this is an addition to that is only focusing on the library, and it will probably have to be in place until the precinct downtown is functioning fully. We heard that it's going to might take longer than this year for it to get going. So for 45,000, I think the peace of mind of the staff and the patrons of the library is a small price to pay.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. I'm going to suggest, if you're agreeable, that you second that. Councillor Dufour did mention at the last council meeting he wanted to support it, so I'd be happy to have him move it if, given that he's attending virtually and at a bit of a disadvantage there.
That's all right. I will second it.
Thank you. Councillor Dufour, did you want to make comment on that at all?
I just thought that the library had a great presentation this year. I think they've shown the metric with the decreased police calls. And I think anytime you're seeing somebody or an intervention come to you with a decrease in police calls, I think it's really incumbent on us to support it, especially when it's at a much lower level than increased police costs would be. So very happy to support this one. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Other councillors? Seeing none, we can have a vote on that matter. All in favor? Oh, wait, Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps not exactly on this motion, but through you to Mr. Facey, would you be able to tell us what the tax increase would be this year with all of the things that our entire wish list so far?
We're still at 3.68.
You, Mr. Mayor, I've been tracking them each individually. Without the capital inflation, we're at 3.93, 3.68 with the capital inflation to be discussed.
So with the library security, we remain at
3.93.
However, we still have the, so 3.63?
3.68, I believe.
3.68. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Just for clarification, if we did vote yes right now for this, we're still going to have a debate once we go through the budget. So basically, we're not saying this is going to be set in stone. We go through the whole budget and then we have a final vote on all these added pieces.
Cool. We're voting on these individually. That will come out of committee of the whole and be one motion with all of this in it.
Right.
Which we can have debate, although we've debated most of this already.
Right. But again, some people may change their mind, say no, yes now, no later.
Sure. Although we're at the last item, that'll be about 5 minutes from now.
Yeah.
So can we have a vote on this Wait, Councillor Bruni, were you raising your hand or were you voting? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. 10-2 from what I can tell. Councillor Guardian, Councillor Hollingsworth's opposing.
9-2.
Yes. I think I'm not balancing the budget.
Do you want me to just read? There's one remaining.
Yes, there's one motion remaining.
Resolved that council direct the reduction of the increase to capital reserves $18,170 down to $69,170 for an operational savings of $350,000.
Mover Councillor Spina, seconder Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Gardy, are you asking a question or you were offering to move or second? Okay. Council, I propose this to try and bring the budget down from 3.9, whatever the number was, to 3.68. So if we are supportive of this, it'll help us reduce the budget to a level that I think is more palatable. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Question? I guess through you to Mayor, can you explain the negative impact that this could have? So if I read this correctly, this is on capital. And for the viewers at home, couple examples, or maybe through you to Mr. Ver, what impact would it have on our capital?
I think probably CFO Shell can explain what this will do to our reserves from a impact standpoint.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, if you recall, in the early part of 2024, we came with a long-term financial plan, which had a recommendation for 2025 of a 0.5% levy increase to start increasing our reserves. That will ramp up to about 2% going forward over the future years. Our reserves are low. We don't have a sustainable level for our capital replacement. That is the reason why we're asking for it. But on the other side of the coin, we did receive some significant grants that have kind of offset that. So in the short term, we're okay. And we will be redoing our long-term financial plan to see where that level needs to go going forward. So once we finish our asset management plan financial plans, which are due in July, that'll help guide us with that. And we'll come back to council with a new metric for where we want to go over the next 10 years for the capital replacement. I don't recommend doing this on an ongoing basis because it does set us behind, but we're in a lower inflationary period right now. And like I said, with the other grants, it's not as significant as it could be going forward, but it's not something I would recommend on a regular basis.
Thank you. Yeah, because ever since I've been on council, you've never supported something like this at all. It's kind of like the analogy, if you neglect your house, eventually it's just going to fall apart and you always have to put something aside for the rainy day. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Hollingsworth, just clarify, we are still giving them an increase in the inflationary adjustment, just not as big as of an increase as is being requested. Anyone else with questions on this? Seeing none, we could have a vote on the matter. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
I just need to catch up. Sir Vezo-Allen.
Supportive.
So that's 10-1. And I don't know if you had other discussions on the supplementary items under 8.
We are on 8.2, Council. If there are supplementary items Council would like to debate or bring forward.
It's to 9. Motion by Councillors Zagordo and Spina. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole Council now rise and report City Council 2025 budget deliberations.
Council, everyone comfortable to rise from, oh, wait, we've got CFO Shell here who is,
Two amendments based on what
yes,
basic and budget.
please do.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with the capital inflation reduction, it reduces the amount of resurfacing available to be done in 2025 as well. So that reduction effectively reduces our annual contribution to the asset management reserve, as well as our resurfacing budget of 175,000. So we need to amend the capital budget for that as well. And with the additional funding for park upgrades, we'd like to put forward an amendment to the capital budget to give staff the authority to upgrade one park within 2025 as well, because that's not in the capital budget because as there was no funding source. So those are the two capital amendments that should be brought to council's attention.
Okay. And if those are supported or with that information, is there an amended motion for the capital budget? Yeah.
Captured in the numbers that you just gave me?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So there's an operating resolution that Rachel has or Ms. Tazinski has the figures for, and I will provide the wording for the revised capital resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any questions on that? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Can you just clarify again the resurfacing? That's something important to me, resurfacing, making sure our roads are always top priority.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with the reduction in the capital inflation, it effectively reduced the amount of available capital funding that we had within our capital budget. So our capital budget was prepared assuming that the inflation was included. So we have to make a capital budget amendment as that those funds are no longer available.
Okay, thank you.
Does that, if we are successful in any of our grant applications, connecting links, for example, things of that nature, could the funding that's currently allocated to existing resurfacing projects be reallocated to cover those resurfacing projects that are now being taken out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. If you give me 2 minutes, I can give you what the resurfacing budget was last year versus this year with that reduction.
Sure, that'd be helpful. Councillor Caputo?
Yeah. Can I just ask a question about this supplemental? I just want to ask you a question.
Yep.
So essentially, we touched on everything in the supplemental requests except for the Public Works reserve funding for their fleet.
Michelle, do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Caputo, yes, the 450,000 Public Works Reserve increase is over and above the 550,000 that's already added to the budget for this year. So that was additional ask. If it doesn't get approved or brought forward today to add it, it will be an ask for next year. There was another one too, the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center, we never discussed either, but I think everything else has been touched on.
So Public Works Equipment Reserve is getting 550,000 additional dollars this year.
Correct.
And what's being requested is another 450 on top of that 550 for $1 million total.
I confirm that with GCAO Hamilton Beach.
Councillor Caputo, oops.
There we go.
To Councillor Caputo, you are correct. That additional 450 would get us to the value that the consultant has smooth lined our replacement plan. So to address our backlog, that would in fact put them at the target for this year.
But if it's not in this year's preliminary, it'll be in some portion of it will be in next year's preliminary or the whole thing.
Correct. Recognizing that more equipment does fall to that backlog, so we only further slide behind.
Right. Until we ultimately build in enough to catch up.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Councillor Caputo, are you satisfied with that?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Facey, you said it was about 170 some thousand that would come out of the resurfacing. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, 175,000.
175. Okay. And now through you, Mr. Mayor, to, I'm not even sure, Mr. Rumio, maybe. Do you know roughly how much that would get us in resurfacing kilometers? I know that varies depending on the class and everything, but just ballpark.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, using last year's numbers for resurfacing of a 4-lane road, that would be 125 meters in length. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Facey has updated numbers for us.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the resurfacing budget at the end of 2024 was $3.3 million. Even with this reduction, the resurfacing budget, thanks to the additional federal and provincial funding that we have, is $4.5 million.
Okay, so we'll be ahead of next year, but less ahead of where you budgeted us for.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Councillor Kinnick?
Not for that, just the one other supplemental request for the Innovation Center. Maybe we should discuss that.
Okay.
So would I bring that as a motion, so as a mover? So I'd like to just then.
Before we, sorry, just procedurally here, before we go to that, Councillor Hollingsworth had some additional questions on Public Works. So.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Hamilton Beach. So just looking at your slide here, PW equipment reserve increase. And going back to what my colleague was saying, if I'm reading correctly, the 2025 request will move 450,000 from 2026 to 2025 to reach the revised required target. So if I'm understanding this correctly, is your wish that we as council support this 450? Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, to reach the $2.9 million target, which is where we would be as of the recommended plan and our recommended plan, yes, we would require 450,000 additional funds.
Okay, and again, just for the viewers at home, this amount would definitely go back towards your fleet, your trucks, your plows, as an example. And if you can elaborate on your fleet now, I believe that you have some trucks that are down for maintenance.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, given the size of our fleet, we always have equipment that is down. I would like to comment and thank Councillor for their support, because certainly having some newer items in it with your funding, it has made a difference, although I think it is recognized that it's been a challenge. So yes, the new equipment, that this would mean the difference of an additional 1 ton and additional a bucket truck, to summarize. So these items certainly are within the backlog and would in fact get addressed in the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we?
Oh, we have a vote on the amendments to capital budget. I do need a mover and seconder.
Okay, we need a mover and seconder? Okay, Councillor Bruni and seconder? Councillor Scott? All in favor?
I'll just.
Oh, sorry about that.
So it's resolved that the 2025 capital budget and financing sources be approved with the following changes: reduction in resurfacing, $175,000, and additional parks upgrades, $180,000. And I will open that.
All in favor? No opposed? Councillor Caputo, you're opposed? Okay, sorry.
You're in favor?
Yeah, sure.
Thought we had been implemented.
On Public Works. Back to Councillor Kinnick. On the Innovation Center.
So am I allowed to speak on it, or do I have to bring motion and then wait for a
Bring motion.
seconder?
Yeah, bring motion, wait for a seconder.
So resolve that the the addition of the following outside agency increases Innovation Center to 25% declines over 3 years to allow the Innovation Center to transition revenues, offset the loss proposed 2025, $208,417. 2026, $138,945.
If you just give us this year's number, we can say declining 25% base. What's this year's number?
208, 417.
208, 417. On a declining 25% basis over the next 4 years.
Yes.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Bruni, seconding that? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Kinnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the only issue I have with us pulling the funding on the Innovation Center is that last year we did partner with them to purchase, or they purchased Algoma Harvest. And based on that purchase, they were expecting the funding to continue. Because their funding is at risk now, I fear that Algoma Harvest will be at risk if they can't stabilize it. And they presented us with a plan where they would remove themselves from the levy within 3 years, and it would be a stable, Harvest Algoma would not be in jeopardy. So I would like to support them for the 3 years, and then we will remove them from the levy after that.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnick. Councillor Bruni, did you have anything to add to that?
No, years ago, they did come to council and they said they would be self-sufficient, but it hasn't happened yet.
Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Councillor Vezoallen?
I would just like a clarification. District Social Services Administrative Board purchased the building that houses Harvest Algoma and its chattels. So Harvest Algoma is not owned by anything. It was really I guess, a managerial oversight. And they pay rent to DSAB. So they don't own the building. DSAB went in and we bought the building.
And yes, and they own, for lack of a better term, the operations of
Managerial oversight.
Yeah. Mr. Facey, 208, 417, if that were added to our preliminary number, or our current number, I should say, where would that put us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be 3.83%.
3.83. Council, other questions on this? Councillor Dufour?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a quick comment if I can. I do appreciate council's desire to see the Innovation Center come off of the levy, and I agree with it. I do think that to have an organization have some legacy dependence on city funding, and for council to want to see that transition, I think those are all good and natural things. The issue I do have is that the Innovation Center and a lot of the services that they offer, the revenue model that those services were designed around was a revenue model that was trying to be as low cost as possible in order to support public institutions in Sault Ste. Marie, so that it was not drawing down on the budgets that those organizations use to fund other services in the local community, but that it could add a greater degree of decision-making capability, JIS services, all of these things to our local community to the benefit of us all. And I do think that there has been a lot of benefit from some of those services from the GIS, not just to our corporation, but to many other corporations in the wider community. I don't think that means council should change their mind. I think it's okay that council wants to see a transition to a different kind of revenue model, a different kind of means of the Innovation Center supporting themselves. But I do take the point from Mr. Brugen's presentation that revenue models generally don't just transition overnight. And I think that is why a graded or a stepped model was presented to us for our support to continue to decline. I think that there would be certainly some healthy debate around this table as to how far and how fast. But for myself, I'm not comfortable with going from full support to zero, even with the 1 year's notice that was given. I think, we gave 1 year's notice. They came back with a compromise position. I think it's on us, responsibly so, to state what our compromise kind of final offer is. And I personally would not like to see it be zero, but I'm not sure what the appetite around the table in person is for what number that would look like and what step it would take. So I am supportive of Councillor Kinnick's motion, but should it be defeated, I would like to hear from perhaps yourself, Mr. Mayor, or other councillors around the table, what kind of number would be suitable. Thanks.
Sigardi.
I appreciate where Councillor Kinnick's coming from, and I understand the need for the Innovation Center to try and take some time to transition to something a little different that would generate a bit more revenue and make them self-sufficient. That said, just to correct Councillor Dufour, it's not 3 years, it's 4 years, because we gave them a year already. So it's not like they're taking 3 years to transition, they're taking 4, because 1 year's gone already. I'm of the opinion that over the course of those 12 months, not enough that was done by the Innovation Center to move towards what we what we directed them to do last year at this time. My position is my position. That being said, I understand why some councillors would like to kind of throw them a bone, if you will. I am not in favor of throwing them a bone. So I'll leave it up to the collective wisdom of this body and know that even though I won't vote for whatever you say, you will kind of have my support otherwise, in the hopes that the Innovation Center will get to where you want it to get. But we're going to give them another 4 years or another 3 years we'll see what happens. I don't have a heck of a lot of faith, I'll be honest with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Councillor Spina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm going to think it's either CEO Ver or Ms. Shell. We heard from the Innovation Center when they were here last that they charge us a significantly lower rate than what the market rate would be for services that they provide to us. Do we know what that fee would be? Assuming that they don't get any funding here today, I would guess that their next step would be to increase their rates to fair market rates for us for the services that they provide to us. Do we know what that difference would be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, we don't. They would have to come back and look at their budget absent those, the funding resources from the city across their different lines of business. And that's the other thing, because they do have clients out of town.
Right.
So they would have to calculate those rates in order to be a sustainable, or figure out what would make them sustainable as an organization. I do know they have shrunk their staff by 12 to match the market conditions over the last year. So they have been taking some steps to try and reduce their budget and look for efficiencies in the organization.
Right. So my concern, I guess, would be that if we don't fund them for the amount that we are being asked, would we be paying that amount anyway in increased service fees because they would have to generate funds to be self-sufficient?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I would say to be determined. We wouldn't know if it would be offset that entire amount or if it would be some, some variation within there. The services they provide the city right now, we have GIS services, so we pay for those separately. This 277 goes to support the economic development activities of the Innovation Center and the administration of the Innovation Center to do all the things that they do. Mr. Bruin's presentation, he talked about some of the work that they do, say the Vulnerable Persons Registry, for other nonprofit organizations in the community. Those were some of the items as well he was mentioning in terms of having to raise rates if these funds aren't provided to those organizations, and they provide a number of services to different nonprofits. and community organizations in the city.
Do we know what the rate would be if we were to just simply be buying the services from a provider that would be charging us market rates? Or maybe that's a finance question, I'm not sure. Or we don't even know that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, we don't know that.
You wouldn't have an idea
Yeah,
of
we
knowing
would
that.
have to cost that. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a potential that if we don't fund them today, we may be paying for it anyway.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Spina, I think there's some potential that the rates will increase, yes.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Stacy, where do we stand now? Where do we stand now with regards to our levy?
Tracy's mic? $3.68 without the Innovation Center.
3.68, okay. And where would we be if we did add the Innovation Center on again? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 3.83%.
3.83? Okay. 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 My personal view is that as council, I don't want to see us to kick this down for another 3 years because as council, there'll be a new council. I think personally we shouldn't decide if we're going to wrap this up in our own term. So if that is the case, then we basically, I believe, have one more year. We have one more budget before the new council comes into play. So I'm not going to support Councillor Kinnikin's, but I am open to possibly take it down the road for one more year because of his presentation, because he was starting to show that he was creating revenue, and because he did jump in, or they jumped in, Innovation to help the Harvest Agoma. So I don't know if we can suggest a friendly amendment for at least 1 year. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. We'll come back to that prospectively because I think there's some willingness on part of others to suggest something like that. Councillor Vezoellen?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just some comments. I appreciate Councillor Kinnick's efforts in being concerned about Harvest Algoma, but I think, and Mr. Bruin did make that very clear that really Harvest Algoma hasn't cost them anything with the amount of money that was being raised. And one of the walk-in fridges was purchased by the Indigenous Friendship Center. The other walk-in fridge was purchased by a Trillium grant. And as we know, as I said, DSAB purchased the building, and they are going through the process of incorporating as their own not-for-profit entity. So I think my concern is that we did give them a fair, I guess, time frame of when funding would be eliminated. They are a revenue-generating organization. They have a fee for service and everything that they do. Their rural agricultural network is funded by FedNor. It's separate. So at this time, I think we were more than fair with what we did last year in terms of giving them notice of the funding. And I don't support moving forward with that. I have a feeling, as my colleague, Councillor Bruni said, you know, they said 20 or whatever years ago that they just needed a few more years for funding. So I think this is just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it, and I don't think it gives us any resolution. So at this point, while I certainly appreciate the concern, especially regarding harvest, I'm not going to be supporting any further funding to the Innovation Center beyond this budget year.
Thanks, Councillor Vezoellen. We'll go back to the amendment in a moment, unless there are other councillors with questions. You know, for my part, I think that I've been clear on this since 2014, that the 2010 MOU between the city and the Innovation Center said that the Innovation Center would seek to become self-sustaining throughout the period of that MOU. That was 15 years ago, 15 budgets ago. They've had plenty of notice that this was something that the city wanted, and though it came as part of the budget discussion last year. It had been proposed in previous budget years as well, I'm aware of. I don't think that whether it's this year or we put it over 2 years or we put it over 3 years, it changes the ultimate outcome, which is that I think this council, or I'm not sure which way the vote's going to go. Actually, I think that some on this council have determined that it is time to end the municipal base funding for the Innovation Center, and if they can sustain their operations on their own as they promised to all those years ago, they should be able to. And if they cannot, then they'll have to rethink the model that they deliver their services in. So if there is an amendment being proposed, Councillor Hollingsworth and or potentially Councillor Dufour? You're okay, Councillor Dufour?
So the motion as I have it.
Oh, just one sec. Councillor Dufour, did you want to?
Oh, I was going to
propose an amendment?
suggest a friendly amendment to Councillor Kinnick's motion in light of the point that Councillor Gardy was making that, this past year should count as 1 year. I'd be happy to look at moving a friendly amendment to fund them to 50% of what their original base funding was, which I believe would be about 139,000, which would leave them with just that 2-year window, which aligns with the term of this council as well, to Councillor Hollingsworth's point.
Councillor Kinnick, are you agreeable to that?
Yes.
Okay, so an amendment there to put it at 139. What was the number?
So Kinnick had said 208,417.
Yes, that was for year 1, and then the year 2 number was 139. Oh. 138,945.
So is that what the?
That's what the proposed amendment is. And then it would be phased out, half of it next year and then all of it the following year.
Did you want that captured now, or do you want to discuss?
That's
that
what
as
the
part of
motion,
next?
no, that's what the motion
And then
would be for.
I would also be okay if they have to come back to council next year, the next step. Makes it.
Councillor Dufour, are you agreeable to that? If they had to come back next year to ask for the following year? It seems.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep, agreeable.
So I have a motion by Councillors Kinnick and Bruni resolved that funding to the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre in the amount of $138,945 for 2025 be approved.
All in favor of providing that funding to the Innovation Centre? I think we've had the discussion. So all in favor? Councillor Kinnick, Councillor Dufour, all opposed? That does not carry.
Councillor Gardy?
It was opposed. Strongly.
Sorry, I still had you marked as absent, so you were opposed.
It was opposed. I am opposed.
Just about ready. I don't think we need to have the 5 minute.
Just working on the final wording of a motion to rise and report, council. We may need a minute. If anyone needs a bio break, now's the time to take it. I said, if anyone needs a bio break, now's the time to take it.
don't know what it means, but if that's what you say, I will read it. Does that mean? I don't understand.
Take, and then, here, can I type that one?
Council. We are going to call the meeting back to order. Anyone's out of the room, we'll ask that you come back.
Sorry.
All right. That was quick. Thank you, Council. Madam Clerk?
Motion by Councillors Caputo and Spina, resolved that the proposed municipal budget be approved with the following amendments. Clerks, Records and Election Coordinator, 59,776. IT Application Support Analyst Programmer, $132,602. Public Works Maintenance Employee, $87,056. CDS Recreation and Culture Events Assistant, $97,084. Legal Clerical Research Assistant, $83,983. CDES Tourism Cultural Industry Coordinator, $100,591. Draw from tax stabilization phased out over 2026, 2027, 28, 2029, $561,092. Library of Security, $45,000. Art Gallery of Algoma, $30,000. Sault Ste. Marie Museum, $30,000. Bush Plain Museum, $30,000. Arts and Culture additional funding, $70,000. Park upgrades, $120,000. Downtown Security, $150,000. Additional position recruitment allocation, $50,000. CDF Social Equity, $50,000. Dolly Parton Imagination Library, $10,000 with offset coming from conference and event funds. Capital inflation, $350,000. And that the 2025 capital budget and financing sources be approved with the following changes. Reduction in resurfacing, $175,000. Additional park upgrade, $180,000. And that the 2025 sanitary budget and financing sources be approved, resulting in an increase in the corporate portion of the municipal levy from 2024 in the amount of 1.43%. And that the 2025 levies and local boards be approved, resulting in an increase to the levy and local board portion of the municipal levy from 2024 of $145,992,909, representing an increase of 3.68%.
Before you open that for voting, Council, I'll just note, Council's increase, the increase that we were debating tonight, the corporate increase, I should say, is 1.43% of the 3.68%. So well below the rate of inflation this year, which is, I think, around 2%, Madam CFO? 2% as of October. So if there is any debate or deliberation left to be had on the budget, now is the time to do it. So if there is any comments for or against, now's the time to say your piece. Councillor Gardy.
You can cut off my mic in a second. I think I'm going to be voting in favor. There were elements that I didn't agree with, but that could be said for probably many of us around the table. I think it's important that the community knows that we're doing our best to keep everything as affordable as possible. And I just wanted to, which I'm sure you'll do, Mayor, but I just wanted to commend city staff for, thinking of the community and its citizens as they prepared this budget. It was a responsible one. And we know that you're thinking of the community's best interests and trying to balance respecting those who pay for everything and having to provide for them as well the services that you do. So, thanks.
Councillor Gardy, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I think this is an important question. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Shelley Schell. Before we end tonight's budget, can you just reference to the PUC dividend? It's my belief that we always receive a dividend, usually about $610,000. And sometimes it's difficult to see where it is on the budget, but can you just make reference to the PUC dividend?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, there is a fixed dividend that we receive from the PUC annually of $610,000, and that is included already in the city budget under investment income, and you'll find that under the corporate financial section.
Okay. So again, you said 610,000?
Yes.
Okay. And we have not received notice yet if it's going to be higher than that. Right now, we just use 610,000.
We did not receive a special dividend for 2023, if I recall. And usually PUC declares any kind of special dividend at their board meeting, which doesn't happen until the spring of 2025 for the 2024 year end. So we won't hear notification for a couple months. I don't have any information on that.
Okay. So just one last question on this. So last year in 2023, what was it 610,000 as well?
Correct.
Okay. So the last number of years, it hasn't changed. It's been about 610,000.
Correct. I think the last time we received a special dividend was for fiscal year 2022, and it was 460, I think.
Okay. But that's a special dividend versus this is something that.
Over and above the 610 that we get every year.
Okay. And just in conclusion, I think it's great, obviously, it's positive that we receive this dividend. I just think it's strange that we don't see it fluctuate from year to year because usually corporate dividends do.
You will with special dividends that they call. That's when it will fluctuate. We have
Okay.
that fixed level that we always get. So.
Yeah. And we had the special one, I think, during COVID or something like that.
There's been a couple over the years, yes.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And just closing remarks. I think once again, as council, we have done a great job and to be very conscious of our constituents to ensure that our portion of the levy is managed well. And I do want to say, even though some people may have a different view, the Police Service Board, having them come to present their budget to us, I think was still very positive. It allowed us to understand their budget. It allowed us to ask questions, and it allowed us to basically give some feedback. I know it's not mandatory, but I really do wish in the future that DSAB and Algoma Public Health would present their budget. Yes, I do respect that these other boards have our other council members sitting on their boards, and I know they do a great job in going through those budgets with a fine-tooth comb. However, I still think it's beneficial for us to have these other groups come present to us. Why? It helps to educate the community on where their dollars are going. DSAB does great work. Algoma Public Health also does great work. But again, having them present to us allows our community to fully understand in a transparent way where their dollars are being used. Again, I want to say thank you to my fellow councillors that sit on these boards. But again, I encourage Algoma Public Health and DSAB to present to us next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Other councillors? Just like to wrap up by saying that I commend staff for bringing forward the budget that they did. Commend all the work that council did over 4 budget meetings to get it to where it is today. We had the police presentation on November 12th. We had the preliminary budget on November 18th. We had the police come back to us at the last meeting. We also had outside agencies present to us at one of those meetings in between. Lost track of the date. And now we are here. This might be the 5th, now that I'm keeping track. This might be the 5th time we've deliberated on this budget. So it has been a lot of work for council to get it to where it is. Lots of additions, lots of subtractions. I mean, the list here is as long as any I've seen in my 10 years on changes to the budget that have been proposed. Not all of them huge dollar amounts, but all of them significant to the organizations that they impact. And trying to find that balance, like Councillor Gardy said, is the job. And some of this, some of us would have liked to have seen spending elsewhere. Some of us would have liked to have seen reductions in spending elsewhere. The overall goal, though, is to try and find something that we know can be accepted by the community, while also providing the services that the community has come to expect, or that the community expects us to provide that we aren't currently providing. So I think this budget largely achieves that, and we will move forward and hope for the best 2025 that we can with what we have approved. So with that, we can have a vote on this motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
There was correspondence on the addendum from the mayor to the premier with respect to lease costs.
I'll just note, council, that the province of Ontario announced some relief for communities that are policed by the OPP that had a significant contractual increase for those communities this year. They were rightfully concerned, those communities that are policed by the OPP were rightfully concerned about the major increase in the policing costs for them. And the province stepped up and funded a portion of that increase, which is really, that's great for those communities. But for those of us who have municipal police forces, it is an inequity that we now have. We are bearing a larger portion of the policing costs than those other communities that are being subsidized by the province. And so it is a push that a number of communities led by Sarnia's Mike Bradley to have the province contribute to our policing costs as they are across the province in OPP policed communities. So that's on there for your nighttime reading.
And a motion by councillors Caputo and Hollingsworth, resolved that this council shall now adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you, council, and thank you to the community, and happy holidays to all.